All right, so maybe they're not quite like the U in the 80s, but all the Miami Hurricanes are doing these days is winning, winning, and winning. And there's a lot of that these days for the Canes as well, who have struggled through their last few games, but are managing to find the winning formula in the fourth quarter to continue to stack victories this season. The Canes will take a 6-1 record to Blacksburg this Saturday for a noon game against Virginia Tech, which was really stunned, by a surprise Liberty team this past weekend. So what do we make of Virginia Tech? We could talk about that a little bit tonight. And while the path to an ACC championship game appearance is certainly not simple, Miami does remain in the thick of the battle to get to Charlotte. So everybody, get your hands up and let them stay there all night long as we talk about that and so much more as we begin a new edition of CaneSport Live, presented tonight by JFQ Lending, your full-service mortgage provider licensed in more than 40 states. Hello again, everybody. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, and we welcome you once again to CaneSport Live. As always, this is your show, and it'll be driven by your participation. The call-in number is 563-999-3550. That's 563-999-3550. We have 100 open phone lines, plenty of room for everybody to call in and participate. You know the drill by now. You hit the number 1 on your keypad if you want to come on the show. That puts you in the queue. We bring you on the show in the order that you land in the queue. And what we've been finding is sometimes those that think they're at the top of that queue when the show begins have a little bit of competition and maybe aren't as high as they suspected. So we'll see how that goes this evening. But I know a couple guys that, just on a quick glance here, might not be so thrilled with where they are in the queue. Anyway, we once again asked the subscribers at CaneSport.com to post the topics and questions that they would like to hear discussed on tonight's show. And we got a lot of really good ones, and we had some left over from last week as well. So I'm going to be sure to get to those earlier in tonight's show because I think there's a lot of topics in there that people will be very interested in, and so we'll address those in a little bit. But before we get started, I do want to point out a couple things that I think are really key to the Canes winning games these days. And first, on offense, the team is one of the best in the country in the red zone. They've scored on almost 90% of their trips inside the 20 and have scored touchdowns on 16 of those 28 trips, which is 64% of the time. There's some teams that haven't had as many opportunities that, have a little higher percentage. So the stats are a little skewed, but that's a pretty decent performance in the red zone. And that's been a big key for Rhett Lashley's offense so far this season. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Canes are doing a really good job in the fourth quarter. Just look at the game against NC State. They gave up 41 points and 404 yards through 3 quarters. Then in the fourth quarter, the Canes defense limited the Wolfpack to 8 plays for 6 yards. I mean, that's just a staggering reversal. I mean, in any way that you want to evaluate that. I mean, 41 points, 404 yards through 3 quarters, and then 6 yards and 0 points in the fourth. And that allowed them to get out of Raleigh with a victory. They also stopped committing those costly drive-sustaining penalties that we saw earlier in the game. And then, of course, with this extra pressure that they were able to apply, they forced turnover, and DJ Ivey had the game-clinching interception. So those are just a couple things that kind of stand out to me and to set the table for tonight's show. So let's go right out to your calls. We got a lot of guys waiting to get on. The number 563-999-3550. That's 563-999-3550. Again, you hit the number 1 on your keypad if you'd like to come on the show. We're going to begin tonight in the 305 where you're live on CaneSport Live. How you doing this evening?
Good, Gary. How are you?
Doing great. Who's this?
Adam.
Hey, Adam. How you doing this week?
Good. A couple things. One, is it fair to say over the past 2 weeks that Mike Harley has really emerged as that number one receiver? Because I think the past 2 weeks he's had both over 100 yards receiving.
Yeah, I think you would have to say yes, but I want to caution one thing, and I am the biggest Mike Harley fan on the planet. I saw this kid stood out to me 4 years ago when he was a true freshman, and was by far the hardest worker on the team. Stood out at every practice we ever watched, and I just always felt that he was being held back by his size. It was not allowing him to get open. But two things have happened the last 2 weeks. Number one, Rhett Lashley is doing a great job of helping him get leverage and hit angles that are allowing him to shed his cover guys. And the other thing is we've played against slow secondaries. Virginia and NC State are speed challenged on the back end, and that's making Harley look. I mean, Harley's fast. Don't get me wrong, but he's looking really fast right now because the guys that are back there that he's going against have not been real quick. So you put the combination of the two together. Obviously, Rhett Lashley sees that in game preparation, and he's drawing it up to spring Harley, and who is the quickest receiver, I think. I mean, I know maybe if there was a foot race, maybe Wiggins would be right there with him or whatever. But on football game day, Harley looks like the quickest receiver, I would say. And Lashley's done a great job of drawing up plays that isolate him and get him open. And then once he's open, he's been catching the ball. De'Ara King is throwing every ball perfect, playing at an absolute elite level right now, and it's all clicking. And Harley has just put up ridiculous numbers: 180 yards against Virginia, 153 yards against NC State. I mean, it's utterly insane when you look at his whole career, Adam.
Oh, okay, because I just think, especially the second quarter touchdown was just a great throw by King to the back shoulder. And I was just seeing him emerge over the last 2 weeks. And I know we talked about it early on that Miami didn't really have a true number one. So that's why I was curious about that.
I mean, I would say the stats suggest from the last 2 weeks that he's number one, but I'm not sure Miami really has a number one. Mike Harley's not going to be a top 1 or 2 round draft pick or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
He's a good college receiver. But great matchups the last 2 weeks, and he's taken every bit of advantage of them.
Okay. Also, are you surprised with the aggressiveness that Miami's offense has showed this year? Because, again, against NC State early in the first quarter, we went for it on fourth down deep in our own territory. And I don't think we would have done that last year. I think we would have sent out Headley and punted, among other things.
Well, I think Manny Diaz has a lot of confidence in these guys. I mean, as he should. I mean, when you look at the way they're performing, the offense has pretty much been performing for most of the year. I mean, they had some ups and downs in some games, but that's the strength of the team. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, they put up 600 and something yards last week. So I think he has confidence. I personally was not crazy about that fourth down call that you're referring to. I think that was the UAB game, right?
Well, the first one was the UAB, the Cameron Harris, and then a couple other times we've gone for it 4th and 1 and done the same exact play. Sometimes Harris keeps it. Sometimes. Yeah,
I'm not personally big on 4th and 1 when you're inside your 25, 30 yard line. I mean, I'm just, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I think that's taking a huge risk that you don't necessarily have to take. But I think it worked both times, right? I mean, they got the first down. They got the first downs. So, Manny's playing the analytics in those situations, and the analytics do say to go for it in a lot of those situations. But I've also seen analytics cost teams games, but so far it's working. So you can't argue.
A couple other things. I know a lot of people have blamed Blake Baker for the defense's shortcomings, and they're going to lie. I mean, early on against NC State, it looked like we were playing just like a vanilla defense, and we couldn't do anything. Is it more the personnel as it goes on, or what's going on with the defense early on? Because
Adam,
the first three quarters.
I've been saying it's the personnel from before a single snap was taken this season. I mean, I look at our defense. I think the defensive tackle position is very average. Nesta flashes from time to time, and I thought he played great in the fourth quarter the other night. But my next question is, why didn't he play great in the first three quarters? He was clearly making a much bigger impact on that game in the fourth quarter when he picked it up than he was in the first three quarters. Now, I'm not going to say accuse him of loafing or anything like that, but he was a different player in the fourth quarter. So, to me, the challenge to the coaches is you got to get that out of Nesta earlier in the game. But beyond that, I think Hunty is making he's made decent strides this year, but I'm not ready to say he's a great defensive tackle. I think John Ford and Jordan Miller have been extremely average this whole season. So I don't think the defensive tackle position is great. I think it's okay. The ends are obviously good, Phillips and Quincy Roche, but I don't think either one of them are necessarily have been dominant. I mean, they've been good, and they've each had their moments where they've been dominant, but I don't know that they've been consistently dominant. Their sack totals are not that imposing. I think they're good players, and I think Phillips, should he choose to come back next year, which I don't know if he will or not, could really be good next year. I think he's showing a little rust to me from not playing football for a while, and he has great moments and then not great moments, whatever. But he's obviously a good player. He's a freak athlete. But it's good. But to me, the linebacker position is not very good, Adam. I don't think the cornerback position is very, very good. And I don't think the safeties, I think they're okay, but I don't think they make any plays. You're not seeing them making plays on the ball. You're not seeing them get interceptions. They're not forcing fumbles. The turnover chain is hardly ever coming out. I know it came out at the end of the game the other night, but that was kind of almost like a fluke interception. I mean, it was the ball bounced off the receiver. So I think if you look at it honestly and objectively, it's an average defense. And on the Blake Baker question, I don't understand this whole outrage over Blake Baker. Blake Baker is not a traditional defensive coordinator. Blake Baker was brought to Miami because he's a Manny Diaz disciple. They worked together at Louisiana Tech. Manny taught him his defensive system there, and Manny brought him in here to run his defensive system. And Manny spends the majority of his time on the practice field with Blake Baker and the defense. They build the game plan together. They coach the defense together. Manny's on the headset throughout the game. If Manny wants to make a call, Manny obviously has veto authority and can make any call he wants during the course of the game, and I'm sure he does. And I think to just isolate on Blake Baker and make him like a Coach D scapegoat for what people perceive as the defense not being good enough is very unfair. And I don't think it's justified. And I don't think that the expectations for the defense should be higher than what you're getting that has been good enough to get to 6-1.
Okay. And final thing, with the decommitment of Tim Burns, and I'm getting the sense that it was more mutual parting of the ways, is there a concern, since that's the second kid that we pretty much dropped from Northwestern, that could have some long-term effects? That kids from Northwestern will say, oh, Miami will give you an offer, and then they can pull it just like that? Or is that more the nature of the beast of recruiting?
Adam, well, first I'll say I'm not sure it was so mutual. I think that was something that had to happen. I personally didn't think that commitment ever should have been taken. And I think that this is one of the areas of the program that continues to need to be cleaned up. You should be able to go get Tim Burns almost on signing day. It's I think they sometimes get overcommitted with guys that are not top shelf recruits, and maybe that keeps them a little bit from reaching higher in recruiting. And I'm of the opinion that this program needs to reach higher in recruiting. I've said it for several years now. And, if you look back at the recruiting classes, I mean, I've been saying this for 10 years. And if you look back at all these recruiting classes for the last 10 years, the evidence supports what I've been saying for these last 10 years. And that's that the recruiting evaluation has not been good enough. They're not getting enough impact players in recruiting. And too many scholarships year to year are being wasted to the point where this program has almost been on self-imposed probation. And what you're seeing as this team goes 6-1 this year, and if you look back at the last 5 recruiting classes, it is littered with exactly what I'm talking about, Adam. When you see the potential that this program has. I mean, they're 6-1. No, they couldn't stay with Clemson, of course, because we don't have anywhere near the roster to stay with Clemson. But you could beat everybody else without even having to play your best. I mean, so the ACC is full of average teams, and we've brought ourselves back to the pack to where every single game we play, whether it's Virginia, whether it's Pittsburgh, whether it's North Carolina State, might see the same thing Saturday at Virginia Tech. You might see it at Wake Forest. You'll probably see it against North Carolina later in the year, and you might even see it against Georgia Tech. And every game is a life or death battle because we have brought ourselves back to the pack because of recruiting. And there are good coaches in this conference who could take average talent and put a game plan together and give you a tight game for 4 quarters, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking my call, Gary. Have a great rest of the show.
All right, Adam. Thanks for getting us going. All right, 563-999-3550, 563-999-3550. You hit the number 1 on your keypad if you'd like to be a part of it. Let's go out now to the 845, where I believe our man Greg, beaten to the punch yet again. He hasn't been doing really well in that regard this year, but he's here, and I'm sure he's got a lot of great things to say. Greg, welcome back to CaneSport Live.
Yeah, I got plenty to say. Okay, let's start off. Once again, first drive, North Carolina State, right down the field, no answer from Manny Diaz. Second drive, same thing. What is the reason we're not? How come we don't know what they're going to ever know what they're going to do on offense?
I don't think that was the case, Greg. Greg, against Virginia, I think that was a little bit of the case against Virginia, but against NC State, I think they were just getting beat. And you heard what I'm sure you were. I know you were on the line, so you heard what I just said to Adam, and I think that applies. Like, the other team is looking at our defense. They're evaluating our personnel. They're looking for spots where they feel their personnel can exploit our personnel, and they're attacking it. And I think you're seeing them having success doing so. I mean, they had a couple decent receivers that were eating Al Blades alive the other night. And DJ Ivy got beat a couple times, and I think you're just seeing that, Tim Beck for NC State is a decent offensive coordinator. I'm not going to say he's great, but he's been around for a while. He'd be great if he was using number 7, that running back, a little bit more. I don't understand how you can have a talent like that. And I think he only had like 12 touches in the game, but that's their problem. But, you put it all together, a decent offensive coordinator, some decent players. He had a good tight end. I thought the quarterback, I know he's their backup. I thought he was playing at a reasonable level the other night, and the receivers were making plays, making tough catches. And when a team comes out and is having success like that, I think it also puts the defensive coaches a little bit on the defensive. Like they're seeing that their guys are getting beat, and they're not looking to necessarily expose them by leaving them on an island and blitzing all kinds of guys and stuff like that would allow them to get exposed even more. And, I think that the personnel and the success has at times dictated the degree of aggressiveness in play calling on that side of the ball. And I think you also got to consider that with the offense, trying to be an up-tempo offense, I personally think they've dialed back the tempo a lot. I think they're playing with some tempo, but it doesn't seem to me like they're playing at the same tempo as they intended to and were playing at early in the season. And I think that some of that might be designed to protect the defense a little bit and keep the play counts manageable, because the depth is not really great and certainly not developed depth, and they are getting beat at times. So that's what I see. Now I know not everybody agrees with that, but my expectations for defense are not being unmet. I mean, this is about what I personally expected.
Okay. Manny Diaz, this is his 5th year with Miami in the program, correct? 3 years as a coordinator and 2 years as the coach. He recruited every player on that defense, okay?
Correct.
Either from the transfer portal or from recruiting. And he's in charge of developing that talent. He has failed miserably, okay? If you're telling me the talent isn't up to par, who is that on? That's on Manny Diaz.
Well, let me say this, Greg. How about think about if we weren't killing the transfer portal? I mean, imagine this defense with no Phillips, no Roche, no Bubba Bolden. I mean, that wouldn't be very pretty, right?
No,
if you had to take those 3 guys out of the equation. So, yeah, I mean, you're making a great point. And, here's what I'll say. Manny Diaz has never been considered a great recruiter anywhere he's been in college football. He's just been another coach in that regard. Manny's calling card has been an aggressive style of defense, and sometimes, it works, sometimes it doesn't. He's given up a lot of yards in a lot of games through the years. He came to Miami. He had the right talent to use for his system when he arrived here under Mark Richt. I thought, we can knock Golden and Coach D endlessly, very legitimately. But the one thing they did do is recruit some decent players, like the Red Wines and the Jaquan Johnsons and the Joe Jacksons and the Garvins and you can go on and on. A whole bunch of them. So we did have some decent players, especially in the secondary. All of our safeties are in the National Football League, and Michael Jackson was a good college corner. I mean, we could go on and on about the talent that was on the defense the first couple years that we were here, that Manny was here, and he put a representative defense out on the field. And but now Mark Richt leaves, and Blake James is sitting there, and he made the decision to put Manny in this job. Now, you can't blame Manny for that. Manny, what would you rather be, the head coach at Temple or the head coach at Miami? I mean, Manny parlayed what he did the first couple years here at Miami into the Temple head coaching job. That was his opportunity to be a head coach. And, I personally have always felt it would have been in his best interests to go be a head coach at Temple for 3, 4, 5 years, learn how to be a head coach, develop maybe some recruiting networks and things around the country that might help him. But there's a big difference between being a coordinator and a head coach. And, Blake James chose to put him in that position of now he's got to try to recruit for Miami. And if you're going to recruit right at Miami, you got to be able to go compete against Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Clemson and those kind of schools to get the kind of players that would allow Miami to be what everybody wants Miami to be. And to me, Manny's been put in an unfair situation because Manny has never been that guy, okay? And I'm not knocking Manny. I think Manny has been unbelievable in 2020. I thought he predictably struggled in 2019, his first year as a head coach. I thought it went as obviously poorly as it could possibly go. But, he picked himself up off the canvas and it's been unbelievable this year. I mean, I think you would agree with that, Greg. So in every way, hiring Lashley, the other offensive coaches. I mean, Rob Likens, clearly a huge upgrade at wide receiver. Garen Justice, obviously a huge upgraded offensive line. Then getting De'Ara King, I mean, I know Lashley had a lot to do with that, but he had to hire Lashley first, and then they recruit De'Ara King, and now you have an elite quarterback who's totally transformed the whole program and taken what really is an average roster to 6-1. So Manny's had a great 2020, plus we're winning these games instead of losing them. So no knocking Manny at all. I mean, it's been great, but at the same time, the only way it goes to the next level is through recruiting elite players. And Miami's always going to have good enough talent to be what we're seeing right now. You got James Williams, Leonard Taylor coming in next year, a decent recruiting class. This recruiting class was good, Greg. So we're always going to have good enough players to be a representative team. But when you talk about getting to the Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia level, Clemson level, which you have to be able to do to be what everybody wants this program to be, it's got to come through recruiting.
Okay. Manny was Temple's fourth choice, but he was our first choice. That's scary. Anyway, is it true?
But he is 6-1, Greg. He is 6-1. You got to give him credit.
Okay. Did he take over the play calling at the end of that game this week on defense?
I don't know the answer to that question. The way I can answer that is Manny can always make a play call anytime he wants.
Okay. I have one last
So
point.
if he decided to make the calls on that last drive, it wouldn't surprise me in the least. And you know what, Greg? If he did, I don't blame him one bit for doing that, because at the end of the day, what this program does isn't on Blake Baker. It's on Manny Diaz. And, Manny Diaz, he can't be losing these games to NC State and these teams this year like he did last year. And if he thinks he's got to step in at a certain point and make a couple calls, even if it means that he's disrespecting his defensive coordinator a little bit, then that's tough, man. This is a big boy game, and it's not a sad statement on Blake Baker. Okay, Manny Diaz is the head coach, and head coaches are supposed to make calls that help decide games. They're not just supposed to sit there with their arms crossed. So I have no problem if that is the way it played out, which it might have been. I have no problem with it.
Okay. My last point, on the board, this guy Honey made a comment that Clemson's is done after Trevor Lawrence is gone. Did he watch this quarterback they have now?
Kid was the number one recruit in the country. He was the number one recruit. Yeah, he's going to be great. I mean, he's just getting started. I mean, once he figures out what he's doing, they're not going to have a big drop off from Trevor Lawrence with that kid.
Not at all. All right, I'm predicting two things. Miami will win 42-24 this week, and De'Ara King will definitely return in 2021. You heard it here first. Goodbye.
All right, Greg. De'Ara King returning in 2021, I might have agreed a couple weeks ago, but I think as that guy keeps putting up games like he did this last week, I mean, he can go the Lou Hedley route and say, I'm coming back, and obviously we all hope he does. But I think he's playing himself into being drafted at some point, whether it's 4th round, 5th round, 6th round. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, and then I'll get a read on that, and we'll see what's up. But at the level he's playing at, it's going to be hard to make an argument that he should come back. This was his showcase year, and I wouldn't make that prediction because I just think it's going to make too much sense for him to go try to be a pro. We'll see what happens. All right, 563-999-3550, 563-999-3550. Hit the number 1 on your keypad if you want to come on the show. Let's go now to the 870. You are live on CaneSport Live.
Hey, what's up, Gary? This is Lemuel.
Hey, what's up, Lemuel? How you doing this week, man?
I'm good. Okay, so Gary, get ready. I'm coming for you now.
I'm ready, baby.
So
shoot.
All right. We talk about this defense, and I know you're saying that this is pretty average. I'm going to go and run by a couple of numbers. Lester Silvera was the 121st best player in the nation. Bubba Bolden was All-American. Phillips was regarded as the top 5 player in the nation. Al Blaze was the 59th ranked player in the nation. Gil Frierson was a top 150 player in the nation. Georgia wanted him. Amari Carter, Notre Dame wanted him. Corey Couch was going to Michigan. We got him from Michigan. Zach McLeod, 4-star. Going through another, the Blissett kid from New York, 4-star kid. People wondering. Our backup defensive ends, pretty good. Chance Williams, he's a freshman, but Clem's are playing freshman too. Pretty good, top-ranked player. So as I go to that, and I go to which team do I have here? Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has a pretty good D year in, year out. Don't you agree, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're average. Now, Pittsburgh is better than us on defense. This is their class rankings in the last 3 years, 48th, 55th, and 45th. Ours is 8th, 27th, and 16th. So, Gary, I'm here to tell you, it has to be development. It ain't talent. We need to quit that. It's development. The proof is right here.
It could be.
I went to Georgia Tech, the team that beat us last year, 44th, 50th, and they last class right now, their freshman is 27th. These are teams that we struggle with that are nowhere near in talent. Nowhere near, defensively, anything. I went to NC State, 2018, 26th, then they were 32nd, and then they were 43rd. I say that to say all of this. There's talent on the team. It's not average. We need to stop that. No other team in the ACC with the bum teams that we've been beating got a 59th ranked player in the nation that's a cornerback. Nobody else has that. Nobody else on their defense has a player that Georgia wanted in Gilbert Frierson. NC State don't have it. Tech don't have it. Pittsburgh don't have it. Paris Ford probably the only one. Don't have that. So when we start looking at the players and say, "Oh, he's okay," well, I'm looking at Pittsburgh. They full of John Fords and Jordan Millers that they developed. So where is it? The drop off is. I just don't want us to say that it's talent. No. Because I also look at these rankings. Mostly every year we are finished second in the ACC in recruiting. At that time, probably behind Clemson or Florida State, second or third. So the talent is there. So what this comes down to is development. Second point I want to get to, because I've coached the last couple of years, then coached this year. Thank you, have time for myself. But one thing I know, even though like you're saying that Manny's defense, it don't work like that when you're play caller. You don't have the time to go in each and every play to say, hey, this is my input of that, because you're so busy trying to get down the distance. You having guys upstairs in your earphone, in your ear saying, hey, this guy's pulling out every play. This guy's doing this. So you're calling the defense based on all of that, and you're calling and you're in the rhythm.
Well, you're calling the defense based on your game plan, Lemuel, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree? During the week, you make the decisions on what you're going to call in different situations.
But it always adjusts. Like you said, when Manny came out, he said, well, especially Virginia and the other teams, they did a lot of things we didn't see on film. So when you're play calling, you don't see it on film. There's adjustments being made from the guys upstairs telling you what's going on. So you have to adjust on the fly. Everybody comes in with a game plan. Everybody does. But I'm going to tell you, when we have this game plan, it is very seldom does everything hit on the game plan, because guess what? The other team, too, has a game plan. And they know, and they have seen film, too, so they adjust on what they see. So it's going to be different than what you have seen. So all of that is adjustment on the fly. So a defensive coordinator, when he's calling the defense, it's about a feel. No matter if he's calling Manny Diaz defense, he can call Jesus defense. If he don't have a feel for the game and he can't call plays accordingly, he's going to be different than when Manny calls the defense. If you look at that fourth quarter, I do believe Manny Diaz called that defense. He had the play sheet out, and it seemed like it changed when Manny Diaz started picking up the defensive play call. Same defense, Gary. Like you said, it's Manny's defense, same defense, a different result. because the play caller has a different feel. So no matter how we say, oh, it's Manny defense, it's still different because it's a feel. Gus Malzahn and his offense at Auburn had Rhett Lashley as his offensive coordinator. Gus Malzahn was stinking it up. He gave the play calls to Rhett Lashley. Rhett Lashley improved the offense, okay? It's Gus Malzahn offense. Why is it that Gus Malzahn play calling why is the offense performing differently calling plays than Gus Malzahn? It's the same offense because the play caller has a different feel. So it doesn't matter who's defense or who all that don't matter. It's the guy that's calling the plays. Does he get a feel for what the offense doing and how well can he adjust on the fly and communicate? My biggest pet peeve on defense is the edge. And a lot of times when the pass rush, we have no edge on the pass rush. We always have guys dipping in, stunting in, and I think it's by design because I see it so often, and they like the quarterback flushing out, which is crazy because you just give up the edge. The quarterback can just step up and get running lanes. But that's their design. So, but when I see Manny Diaz call plays, he called plays according that would set that edge so you don't have that. It's a difference. So when we look at those things, we can't just say, oh, it's just average players, because I just named the players and I just named what every other average ACC team has, and we got better. So it's no excuse. So on that end, it has to be somewhere where it's a breakdown in Blake Baker. It's no doubt about it. There's it's proof right here.
But,
I got the proof.
I mean, I get what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of it. But like, that doesn't want. I mean, Manny does the game plan with Blake Baker, and Manny can give his input anytime he wants. I mean, to me, that's Manny's defense.
When you coach, that all that goes to when you coaching and you calling plays on the game set. I don't know if you know how fast it goes, but you don't really have the input there. It's before the game when we off on the sideline. But while I'm calling plays, you can't really. It's almost a crazy rule to mess with a play caller. So when the play caller is in the rhythm, he's engaged. He calling the plays, whatever. That it don't matter if it is Manny Diaz defense. Blake Baker does not have the feel. Okay, he doesn't have the feel for the game to be able to execute this defense at a higher level. You saw the difference when Manny Diaz took over the play calling sheet. It was a total difference because he has the same defense, has a better feel for how to call the defense. So when we're looking at this team, I want us to make sure that we're not sitting here talking about, well, this is what we should expect because they average on defense. No, because we play NC State, and it shows right here, they recruiting class nowhere close to ours. When we played Georgia Tech last year,
Lemuel,
I even got North Carolina.
Were the results really that different when Manny was the defensive coordinator? I mean, think back when Rick was here.
Yeah.
At all the games we lost. I mean, we lost plenty of games where the defense didn't. Manny called every single play. I mean, I get it. But we're talking literally. Let's say Manny took over the fourth quarter the other night, which we don't know that he made every call in the fourth quarter. But let's just say he made every call in the fourth quarter. You're talking about 6 plays. 6 plays in a game where NC State ran 63. I mean, we don't know for sure what would have happened if he was the defensive coordinator for the entire game or whatever. Manny's had plenty of games as a defensive coordinator through the years where teams just ran roughshod over his defense.
Okay. Well,
let's be honest. It's not. I'm not criticizing him. There were plenty of them. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to that year when Mark Ritt, won those 9-10 games for us, and that defense that year basically is the reason that we were able to get those 10 wins because we had a defense. We got turnovers, all right? We got turnovers, and the cornerback play was much better. Secondary play was much better.
Better personnel, right, Lemuel? We had better personnel. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, the person
in 2016, 2017, don't you think we had better personnel than we have today?
I wouldn't go that far because when I look at and I see that you getting players that's ranked in the top 60, when you get players that
but you can't just go by recruiting rankings.
I get that, Gary, but let's put it like this. How about this thing? If we can't go by recruiting rankings, Why
You can't go just by recruiting rankings.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's do that. Let's go to Alabama right now. They have Wright from Fort Lauderdale. They have Jordan Battle, Josh Jobe, and Patrick Surtain. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go and say, if you mean to tell me that Gervin Hall would play the same way if he went to Alabama, it just don't make no sense.
Gervin Hall's not as good a player as the guys you mentioned.
You know why? Because he ain't being developed. That's why.
Well,
And
that
you
might be
can't
that might be true, but he's not as good a player. That might be the reason. You could be right, Lemuel, but he's just not. He's not as good a player as you know.
My point is the development in the coaching. You just made it for me. Because if you get all these players, Pope, you can't tell me he going to achieve going because Alabama got some John Mechie kid that's killing. I mean, they just it don't matter who. We'll develop anybody. They got John Mechie out there killing. So it gets down to the development, Gary. And with these rankings and how all these players come out, now everything ain't rankings, but you mean to tell me I got a consistent batch, this is 3 years of players, and you mean to tell me these are the same average results with better players? That's development. And that's all I got to say, Gary. I'll listen.
Lemuel, you could be absolutely right. But for whether it's development or, the one thing I'm going to say about the stars and that, that every year, if you take a football team that theoretically has players from 5 recruiting classes, you're talking about at least 1,300 4-star players in that 5-year cycle in the recruiting rankings. That's a lot of players. And if you're not getting the right 4 stars, the 4 stars don't really mean that much. And all 1,300 of those kids are not really 4 stars. I think there's too many 4 stars personally. I think that's way too many.
But this is the thing. Why is it that all our 4 stars are wrong and everybody else 4 stars are right? That's my issue. We can't.
That go to evaluation, Lemuel? Evaluation, man.
But it's development because let's say
and it could be development, yes. But it starts with evaluation.
I'm gonna give you an example that you were bringing on years ago. Remember Navon Donaldson? How high you was on Navon Donaldson? You was high, super high. Man, we got to get Navon Donaldson.
They had to get him. He was a good offensive lineman from Dade County. You got to win on those guys.
He was, and I agree with you. I was right with you. Now, how is?
But you're not counting on him ballooning up to 400 pounds either. I mean, that's on him.
But okay, but every top player that we get, it's a story like that, Gary. Okay, what about Pope? Well, he busted out. What about Hall? Well, he's not as good. What about Blaze? Oh, well, he's not as good.
It's evaluation. It's evaluation in a lot of cases. Like, Mark Pope. Like, what's held Mark Pope back? Is it that he's not fast enough?
I can tell you it's the development of our offense. Listen, you can't say
No, wait. Stop for 1 sec. Let's talk about Mark Pope for 1 minute. Okay, what's held Mark Pope back? If you asked me that question, I would say strength, and I would say he's a little mentally soft, and that's hurt him. Okay. And those two things, strength has kept him from being able to explode off the line of scrimmage and beat people off the line of scrimmage, and he hasn't always shown a lot of mental toughness. And to me, that's what's held Mark Pope back. What would you say?
And I could counter that because Deshaun Jackson is 165 soaking wet right now, right? Deshaun Jackson? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So same skill set. Okay, so what that means to tell me is when you have a pro-style offense that's not meant for kids that has an open space for being in space, because that's what his talent is. He's really a slot receiver that needs to be in space because his speed needs to let out. But if you've been here in 2 years, you watched our offense last year, you can't blame really none of the players for Enos because that was horrible. And then the year before that, Mark Richt, that was horrible. Malik Rozier was our quarterback, which was pretty much I'm trying to think of a quarterback that I could compare to that was pretty bad. But, I mean, you look at that. So we never really had a system that fit our players. Our players are based on speed and space, but that's, we've been saying that for 2 years and we finally got it. But you mean to tell me Alabama wanted him, so their evaluation was bad? No, Alabama wanted Gervin Hall. Was that evaluation bad?
We don't know that. We don't know that they really wanted Gervin Hall. Okay. That's, I mean, you would say Alabama wanted Christian Williams too. Like Alabama, everybody wants to say Alabama wants everybody, but Alabama usually gets what Alabama wants.
Right. But hold on. Jordan Battle was nowhere at high school. If I can compare him at high school, he was nowhere good as Gervin Hall in high school. He wasn't. So they got Jordan Battle. So when we go back to it, when we talk about evaluation, kept flirting with Nesta. Florida wanted Nesta. Gervin Hall was wanted by Bama. Pope was wanted by Bama. Al Blaze, everybody knew he was going to go to Miami, so they didn't touch him. Everybody will want him. The Corey Caps, Michigan wanted him. All right. So we're looking at these USC with our safeties. Notre Dame wanted Amari Carter. So Keyshawn Washington is a pretty good safety. Harris is a pretty good safety. So when we go through this, all of these players, these other teams was making evaluations too. These top teams, are their evaluations bad? The product showed their evaluations ain't bad. It's the development. It's just all to it. And Blake Baker does not have a feel for the defense at all. People wide open. You should know coming up. You should have a feel that 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 3 coming up, what a team is going to do based on film. You should have a feel of making sure to make NC State beat you and I wouldn't say press and just play man, but you should be able to dictate what any team does, live or die. When Manny Diaz was the defense, he is going to say, hey, we're going to be aggressive, and you're going to have to beat us being aggressive. Blake Baker sits back there, let you catch the ball, stuff wide open. And I'm going to tell you what shows where it's not the preparation is bad. And this I'm going to get off. When a team comes out, every team that we play, when they first come out, on the first drive, they score. And it's nowhere near hard. It is very easy. For every team on the first drive, they come out and score every time. And it's nowhere near hard. And I'm going to tell you, you can say there's game plan with Manny Diaz, but I'm telling you, that is on the defensive coordinator. I don't care who defensive is. I don't care if you've been coaching with Jesus and he gave you the game plan. If you can't call plays on defense, it shows.
Lemuel, it also could be a good job out of the offensive coordinator in game planning. Let's give it fair credit. Okay. All right, man. Listen, hey, great call, great points. On the development front, we don't really know if that's the only reason. I mean, I get what you're saying, but we don't know. It's hard for us to know for sure that development is the reason why guys might not play as well as we think they should. Maybe Gervin Hall is playing as well as Gervin Hall can play. Who knows? But anyway, hey, awesome call, and give us a call next week.
All right, thank you.
Yep. All right, 563-999-3550, 563-999-3550. Hit the 1 on your keypad if you want to come on the show. I think now is a great time to bring in our CaneSport managing editor, Matt Shodell, for his weekly visit to CaneSport Live. And Matt, welcome back. And man, there's a lot after that last call. I mean, I thought Lemuel brought it pretty good tonight, and I'd love to get your opinion on a couple of those things. So why don't we put you on the spot and start out with his Blake Baker argument, and should Manny Diaz just be his own defensive coordinator? And then let's talk a little bit about player development. Does Miami do a good enough job developing the players that it does recruit? You with us, Matt? You there?
Oh, here I am. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Did you hear did you hear my questions, or were you?
Yes. No, I guess I was having a Zoom moment somehow over your Blog Talk Radio. I don't know how that's possible, but I did. Okay, so the Blake Baker thing. So with Blake, I guess my thoughts on it are, it's like, Blake and Banda are co-coordinators, but really Manny Diaz is still the coordinator. Like every time we ask him about practice and the offensive side, he's like, well, I spend my time in practice on the defensive side. So he's like, it sounds like he's like really not, in practice, at least a head coach. In practice, he's really involved on the defensive side and leaving the offensive side to Rhett Lashley. I think it's very obvious. So if you don't think he's like really having a say in how they're going to be calling the defense and what they're going to be doing, that he's on Blake Baker's ears in certain situations, I mean, I'm sure that's the case. And I will also say, like, Miami's always had great leaders on defense, player-wise, like the Ed Reeds and all that stuff. But, like, it bothered me a little bit that, Manny keeps saying how this is a different team and they don't need, they're not overlooking anyone anymore. It's a different culture. But then at the same time, there's this, like, dichotomy where Gil Frierson literally had to stand up at halftime, and his message wasn't like this Ed Reed message. It was more like, what are you guys doing? Like, our heads are in the clouds, like, let's just play football like we're supposed to play it. Like, that shouldn't be something you have to say anymore, right, if that's really the case. And what Manny Diaz said, that this team really has overcome these obstacles and is taking every team like a new team every week, then Gil Frierson would not have had to stand up at halftime and say, we're not taking this game seriously and get your heads together and let's go, Like, that's not something you have to do. So that's a little worrisome on defense. Player development-wise, look, I mean, it's only been on defense, I think there's been decent player development. You look at the Corey Couch is like a perfect example. He came in, he was nowhere ready to play last year. And you could see even on special teams, like he was just sort of running around very light, he had the speed and stuff, but you could see he needed a lot of development. And this year he's really looked good. So, like, you can certainly point to several players on defense and say, okay, they've improved. Rhett Lashley just got here on offense, so, it's a little bit harder to say on offense. But I think the player development's been good. It's just, I'm a real proponent. I know some fans disagree with me, but I'm a real proponent of if you're a great coach and you have bad players, you're going to lose games. And if you're an average coach and you have great players, you're going to win games. That's just how I feel about it, okay? And, you can argue about that or not. But, like, if Manny Diaz, and if you guys out there, some of you might think he's an average coach, well, if he brings in and he has Alabama talent, they're going to be playing Clemson in the ACC title game every year. That's my opinion, okay? Can a great coach make a difference in a couple of games a year with a team that's, like, sort of maybe a little below the talent level of other teams? Yeah, but I'm talking about, like, a real high-level talent, which is what they need to recruit to. And so the bigger question to me in player development isn't player development. It's like they need to get the recruits in here, because if they're not getting the top recruits, there's only so much higher of a ceiling you're going to have with the guys you bring in. And they need to be recruiting at I'm not a big a big star guy, but I mean, they need to bring in the 5-star, 4-star guys who actually are 4- and 5-star guys, not the guys who show up and all of a sudden they're 2-star guys. So
I was trying to explain that to Lemuel. And I know it's like, listen, you people evaluate the kids in high school and they give them a star ranking. And I know Al Blades had a 4-star ranking. When I watched Al Blades, I saw a 3-star talent. That's my personal opinion. When I watched him in high school, and I think you and I talked about it a lot.
Yeah, Al Blades and John Campbell, we both felt that they weren't like the highest level guys that we saw.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, John Campbell absolutely was not a 4-star talent. And I remember thinking that, and you and I discussing it at the time. So the rankings aren't always going to be spot on. The analysts are seeing these kids for a very brief time, sometimes only once, and they're not going to get every single ranking right. The rankings are a fun barometer for all of us every year to look at and to evaluate recruiting classes and assign team rankings, but they're not an absolute. And there's a lot of 4-star kids. Like I told Lemuel, if you take a 5-year cycle, which is a typical football team, you're talking 1,400 kids that have a 4-star ranking. So you and I totally agree. It's which 4 stars you're getting, and that comes down to your ability to evaluate talent, and that's where guys like Butch Davis were just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to I remember walking into a Miami coach's office back in the day, and this was during the Larry Coker era. Okay, I think it was actually Larry Coker's first year as head coach. And I don't want to say who the coach was, but they used to let us actually go into the offices for interviews in the coach's offices. They don't do that anymore. And I walk in, and this coach has up on his screen the Rivals.com rankings. And yes, there was Rivals.com back then. And we sort of talked about it, and he's saying he's trying to find recruits off the rankings that they can go after. And back then, look, anybody that you recruited was coming to Miami in those days, okay? I mean, they all wanted to come here. But they started recruiting off lists. And to me, that was as big a reason as any that I can point to for why the program started to falter. And once a program falters, and this is something I talked about on the boards this week, once the program falters, it's a lot harder to bring it back up. Just like when you're at the top, it's a lot easier to keep it going, right? Because when you're winning, top recruits want to go there, right? Because if you're winning, you got the top players and they're going to the NFL and making money, and that's what guys want in high school. When you're losing, or not putting guys in the NFL because of that, because obviously you don't have that kind of level that you're putting these guys in the NFL, players aren't going to want to come there, right? So that's, that was sort of the argument I was trying to make to some fans this week on the message boards, where it's like, okay, great, you want to play Clemson, I get it. That's what Miami's always wanted to do. We want to play the best, we want to beat the best. That's the Miami Hurricanes. That's what we are, right? But you have to get to the point of this program where you're winning games to the point that top recruits around the country, not just in Miami, want to come here, because we already know that Miami kids are going to come here and some aren't, okay? That's just the way it is. It's just modern-day recruiting. So you got to be a national program. You're not going to be a national program at Miami right now based on the last 10 to 15 years of success/failure until you get back to that 10 wins for 2, 3, 4 years in a row. Then you're getting all these top kids from California and from all these other states that you can really cherry pick, and then it's just a rolling ball, like what Alabama's done, and LSU in recruiting, and Georgia in recruiting, things like that. And to get to that level, you can't get blown up by Clemson twice in the same year. You can't lose to Clemson in the last game of the ACC title game and then lose a bowl game and then go into the offseason hoping you're going to all of a sudden get attract all these top kids here. But if you somehow pull out a bowl game, you wind up 11-1. You get tons of buzz, top 5 team heading to the next year. And then maybe the next year you do really well because you just stacked a recruiting class on top of another recruiting class. Then you get a third recruiting class on top of that. That's how you get the ball rolling. And that's why I'm telling people maybe it's not so bad if they don't play Clemson at the end of the year this year, because other schools do negative recruit. Oh, why would you go there? Look what just happened at the end of the season. They got killed by Clemson again. They lost a bowl game. Look at us. It's a problem. And until fans understand, make the sacrifice for a year or two where you are getting those 10 or 11 wins maybe without having to face Clemson twice, and stack the recruiting classes, and then you can compete with Clemson on an even playing field, and then play anyone you want. That's where that's sort of my point. I want to get there. I don't want to, be like one of these. A perfect example in the NFL, right? If you're a team that's in the middle, the middle of the pack, 8-8, 9-7 every year, you're not getting a top draft pick. You're not going to get those studs that are going to really elevate you to that next level, right? And that's sort of where Miami's been. They're just sort of in the middle. They're not really standing out to recruits. But if they can get in that top pack for 2 or 3 years in a row, they'll be getting top national recruits. I'm telling you. And that's the key. We got to get there.
But to me, they've been in the middle because they haven't recruited well enough. And you could go back to the last 10 years, and we do it every year.
It's like a recurring cycle.
It's a recurring cycle. Yeah, it's not a byproduct schedule or who you're playing and looking for a softer out to make yourself look like something you're not. It's about coaches like when Butch Davis had his best recruiting classes, we were on probation winning five games. I mean, and they were down to like 14 scholarships or something like that. And
that was a different era. That's when all the Miami.
Well, he was the best. No, it was him. He made it a different era. Like that guy was. He and Jimmy Johnson together.
Well, he was an evaluator for sure.
Yeah. They refined the evaluation of recruits. And Butch Davis used to sit in there 10 and 11 o'clock at night with Pete Garcia, and they would just sit there and evaluate kids and decide who was going to make the cut and who was not. And they were unbelievable at it. And, to me, like the formula is, we all talk about you got to dominate Dade County. You got to dominate Dade County. Yeah, you do need to dominate Dade County. You need to dominate Dade County by getting the best players in Dade County. But that doesn't mean you fill a 20, 25-man recruiting class of all kids from Dade and Broward County. Like, that's not going to get it done, in my opinion. Like, you got to be able to get the best in Dade and Broward. Then you got to be able to go up the state and get yourself some more starter-level players. And then you got to be able to leave the state of Florida, and you got to be able to identify and recruit players like Ed Reed, Reggie Wayne, Bryant McKinney, De'Ara King, Jalen Phillips. All the best players on this team are all transfers that didn't come from South Florida. So the proof is in the pudding right there, and we're not even at an elite level yet. So, it's a combination of it all. And, I think all these points for the last 20 minutes or so that started with Lemuel and continued with you and everything are all great points. But to me, it starts and ends with recruiting, and you got to be able to evaluate so you don't take players that aren't as good as maybe what their ranking is or what other people might think they are, and that you're getting guys that really can develop into great players. You got to be able to go out and compete with the big boys for the best, because there's other coaches that are doing evaluations too. So, Matt, to switch gears here, your overall thoughts on what you saw against NC State and where this team is going into Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's pretty much, we sort of know now what it is, I mean, the team is what it is. It's an imperfect team that finds ways to win. There's nothing wrong with that. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I mean, I don't think that's going to change between now and the end of the season. The NC State game, there were some concerning parts of it. The recurring penalty issues that they just can't seem to get fixed. I don't get it. Why they can't get these kids to just not commit these, I think a lot of them are totally coachable, coach-fixed penalties, however you want to phrase it. I don't know. Offense looks great. De'Ara King is a huge difference maker for the program. I just hope he comes back next year also. I mean, he really is an exciting, dynamic player. And, I mean, it's so much fun to watch these games now. You used to cringe watching the offense, right, for a number of years. And just it's so much fun to see a Miami offense that's, hitting on some deep balls and just can do things in so many different ways. And, every time they snap the ball, something great can happen. It used to be like, oh, boy, what's going to happen now? Now you sort of it's almost like the players are getting confidence and so are the fans, on offense, right? It's not just Mike Harley gaining his confidence. It's fans gaining their confidence that when Miami gets the ball, they're probably going to move the ball and they're probably going to score in some fashion, right? And the Virginia Tech defense is just not good. I think the Liberty quarterback had 125 rushing yards and over 200 passing yards and like 3 or 4 touchdowns last week. I mean, De'Ara King, I think, is going to light these guys up. I know Miami's a slight underdog in the game. It's a little weird for a top 10 team in the country to be an underdog, even on the road to a team that's unranked that has 3 losses. But with that said, the experts are sort of seeing what we're seeing, which is that Miami can lose really any game just because they do make mistakes. They're not perfect. But at the same time, I don't think this is a game Miami's going to lose. I just think Virginia Tech has too many problems on defense, and Miami's just too good on offense right now.
Well, I think they're probably anticipating Hooker's going to light up the defense. They're going to have a hard time matching up with him. That's what I'm guessing that people are seeing, and that's why they're.
Yeah, that's
maybe.
A fair thing to say. But I think I think if you compared Miami's defense versus Virginia's offense and then the vice versa, I still like the matchup better of the Miami defense versus Virginia Tech offense than the alternative. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no argument. So any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm just excited to see what happens on Saturday. I do, I do think that the linebackers are going to be a really important piece this Saturday because they're going to have to really keep an eye on Hooker and the run game, especially if Virginia Tech starting running back, who's a real bruising downhill guy, is playing. I mean, it's going to be really on Zach McLeod and B.J. Jennings to totally up their games, and the defensive tackles too, really hold their point of attack. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And I think we'll know in the first couple of drives if this defense is ready because, Virginia Tech comes out and they're going to be mad off last week's loss, and they're going to try to come out and just run the ball down Miami's throats and hit them in the mouth. And if they can't do it, then right off those first couple of drives, I'll have a real good feeling that, Miami's going to win that game. But if they are able to, it's going to be a real, one of these high-scoring nail-biter type games again. So I think we'll get a good sense of that pretty early on here. If they can make Virginia Tech one-dimensional passing, Miami wins the game.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks for popping in, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds great.
All right. That's Matt Shodell, our CaneSport managing editor. Always love to have him pop into the show and share his thoughts. 563-999-3550, 563-999-3550. You hit the number 1 on your keypad if you'd like to come on the show. Next, we're going to go out to the 973, where I know who's waiting, and he's always ready to bring it. We'll see what he's got to say, and that's Ross. Ross, welcome back to CaneSport Live. How you doing this evening?
Gary.
What's up, Ross?
What's going on, Gary? A couple of things, man. I always want to come on before Matt. Because I wanted to chime in on a couple of things I'm going to say, man.
Well, you can chime in on what he said, and you're better off following him.
Now I got a couple of things. I love the fact that we're going to always start off that way. Kudos to big-time wide receiver. I'm going to say he's big time because he's big time for us in that game. And that's Mike Hardy. Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you. I got some questions, Gary. Okay? Gary, I see defensive and offensive coordinators speaking to their guys on the sideline in groups. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like the fact that they get these guys together. There's no social distancing or anything like that. I have a small little comment, and people might be annoyed when I ask you this question, but okay, it's fine. Derek King is our man. He is the man. He is the number one uno. But God forbid he gets hurt and he got to miss a few series or so.
Yeah, it's over.
I see our offensive – hold on. Yeah, but I don't want to look at it like that. I see our offensive coordinator speaking to him every play, which I love. Love it. But none of the other quarterbacks are ever listening to what they're talking about. Why is that?
Great point. I don't know. But you're right. I see the same thing that you see. I mean, Lashley is coaching the hell out of Derek King.
Nobody's ever throwing. And there's no social distancing thing that's going on anywhere else. So I don't care if it's Van Dyke. I don't care if it's freaking Perry. Nobody else. It's not like in NFL where they listen through the headset to the certain calls and they can take mental reps. And there's no one trailing those two guys when they're speaking. What if King got to come out for whatever reason?
I can't answer that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I agree with you. Like, I don't see Neil Cozy Perry and sitting there listening to what he's telling Derek King.
Or Van Dyke, And I got to excuse him when he can't make it because he's probably a COVID situation. That's for Van Dyke. Of course, he can't listen then. But when he's actually active and he's dressed out, he's never around the offensive coordinator. Okay, I don't want to spend so much time on that. I only got limited time. I know. Gary, just wanted to say this, man. I was so upset. When I said I was so upset with Manny in the first half, it's not for what you think. First of all, I didn't like the way we started on defense. No one ever likes that. But North Carolina State was getting away with a lot of pushy stuff, a lot of dirty stuff, Gary. And Manny just standing there like a goddamn statue, not getting on the refs. The North Carolina State coach need to be fined anyway because he's never wearing his thing over his nose, okay? And he's getting on the refs and he's doing this and he's doing that, and Manny is just staring. And I hate a quiet coach, Gary. Manny has changed since he became the head coach and not the and when he was a defensive coordinator, he was like a maniac. He's tapered down. I don't like that Manny. I don't. Cause what I'm getting
he does look like he's trying to stay very calm on the sideline.
But that's nonsense because you got to work the refs. Because it was a play when he was going to his if you notice he was tapping his receiver on the side, his headset. He was trying to tell the ref something. The refs started ignoring him, and he just kept being ignored. And I want to make a point. The reason why I'm making up this point is this: they called Jalen Phillips off the field before the half to calm him down, and I was pissed with that. Don't calm him down. He did nothing wrong.
He was out of control, Ross.
No, he was not out of Gary.
He was out of control at that moment.
Gary,
he was going to get them a 15-yard penalty. No question about it.
Half? No way. He was going for the ball. He was trying to knock the ball out. And
that guy had been down for 3-4 seconds. He was going to get he was losing his mind a little bit.
And Gary, here's the thing. He's mad for all the chippiness that was going on. And then when Rocher got that penalty, he should have never picked up that penalty because that offensive lineman was riding him. He was riding him. Was he not riding him? That's why he got the push, the penalty. Was he not riding him? Because if you was watching the game, they came back out of the timeout.
I thought he was a little late with the push. That was my thought.
Gary, you give these players. Gary, you are so hard on these players.
I thought he was a little late. I thought he could have been a little more disciplined at that moment.
After the guy was riding him like a horse?
I mean, obviously the ref thought he was late with the push. I mean,
no, of course, Gary,
I've seen a lot of bad calls this year, Ross. I didn't think that was one of them. I thought he was late with the push, and I also thought that Phillips was losing his mind a little bit, and I thought it was a good move to get him out.
So what do you give for the offensive lineman that's riding him, Gary? What do you say about that?
He wasn't. Okay. I didn't think he was riding them after the play. But go ahead, keep going.
All right. Okay. Somebody else will come on and tell you who was riding them. Okay. We could get King hurt, man. We had too many throwaway plays. Okay, our guards are not getting any push. So why don't you let our quarterback go up? Well, these throwaway plays get these throwaway plays that's getting nothing out of it, not even 2 yards, gotta be removed out the offense, man. Totally.
You're saying he's running too much.
Flat into the guards. Just throwaway plays. Just throwaway plays. This doesn't make any sense. You see so many just throwaway plays. Okay. So when are we gonna in this game, Ferguson got away with he got away 3 times with being offsides. Okay? So when was somebody gonna call him to the sideline and rip him one? We got very lucky with those plays where he could have been called for offsides. And if you had the commentator say when he gets to the sideline, somebody's going to say something to him, and when he got there, no one said anything to Gary. That was terrible. Terrible. Hey, also, again, they was doing dirty stuff. When Harley had the touchdown, he had to go up the stairs. He was pushed up the stairs by the DB. He could have gotten hurt.
I mean, the guy was trying to make a play there. It's a tight end zone there, Ross.
You don't need to make a play after you know the kid catch the touchdown.
Ross, that's a tight end zone there.
Bang play. That's not a bang play. Hell no, you don't do that. Okay.
That was but you're nitpicking.
You didn't go to the game, right? You watched the game, right?
Ross, you're nitpicking. You're nitpicking.
Okay,
that end zone at NC State that corner of the end zone at NC State is a very tight. It's a tight end zone. Of course, the guy was trying to make a play.
I'm off of that.
Of course, he's trying to knock the ball out of Harley. I didn't think it was a dirty play, but go ahead, keep going.
Gary, I'm off of that. Did you go to the game?
Keep going, Ross. Yeah.
I'm actually
Ross.
no.
I was not. I was not in Raleigh. No.
Okay, so you watched the game.
But I saw the same thing that you, Ross. I saw the same thing you saw.
I'm not bringing up that point anymore.
I didn't think it was dirty. I thought the guy was trying to make a play, and Harley had so much momentum. He was running full speed, and he ended up having to go up those stairs. I think they need to look at that. That's a dangerous spot at their stadium.
I'm done talking about that. I'm bringing up another play now.
Okay,
did you see what I told you about last week? Did you see?
Oh my God, Ross! This goes on. You do this every week, so go to your next point.
I'm trying to. I'm saying, did you see the center not snapping the ball properly to 10? Did you notice that on TV?
I noticed that a few times, yeah.
So now last week when you told me I was out of my mind, I know what I was talking about.
I still don't think it's an enormous problem, Ross. They had 640 yards of offense.
Okay. How did our linebackers grade out in this game? Any
Pretty
idea
average.
on your
Pretty average.
And you know who coaches the linebackers?
Yeah, Blake Baker.
Okay, and who? And that's Manny Guy, right? He got 2 guys on defense that he's saving because those are his buddies. And that's Baker and Pike. Pike can't recruit to save his life. Okay? He can't recruit to save his life. Packy, whatever his daggone name.
All right, let me ask you a question, Ross. What does he recruit?
Well, no, I know that he's.
What's his recruiting responsibilities?
Everybody, because he comes up north. He goes up north to recruit linebackers and defensive ends, and I know he does. St. Joseph, Bergen Catholic, all those schools. I know those guys that he's recruiting. So he's not just recruiting his position that he's coaching on the team. He's recruiting up north too. Correct.
Okay, so now would you agree that that's a little bit tougher than being the guy that recruits Dade County?
Gary,
I'm not saying he's a great recruiter, Ross. Ross, I am not trying to make an argument that Jonathan Patzke is a great recruiter. Okay, I'm not trying to say that. But what I'm saying is, guys like him, Blake Baker, who's going toe-to-toe with LSU in Louisiana, they're taking on a tougher challenge, and we don't have a head coach that's a great recruiter that is going to tilt the scales in recruiting. So it's not easy.
Gary, really, North Carolina, honestly, LSU, honestly, and all those other teams are not going up north to recruit those kids. They're not, Gary. I'm here to tell you they're not. So please don't bring those. If you're bringing up Virginia, Penn State, and those teams, then fine. But don't bring up those other teams that you just did because they're not doing that.
What teams did I bring up? I didn't mention one other team. Come on, Ross, you're being ridiculous. Go, keep going.
I'm not being ridiculous.
You're being ridiculous. I didn't mention any other team. I just said that they're recruiting out of state and they're trying to recruit good players out of state, and it's difficult when you're going 6-7 and you don't have a lot of bullets in your holster. And no, I'm not trying to say they're elite recruiters. They're not elite recruiters.
So they got to go. Time for them to go. Anyway, listen, you're making a point on these transfers, and you're saying they're not playing well. They're not getting sacked. Yeah, I'm surprised because I think that you're better than this. The fact that they're not getting sacked is because we're facing quarterbacks that's getting the ball out of their hands. You know what they're doing well that you're not making a point on? They're stopping the run, and they're playing, and they're doing really good on the edge. When they send the players to our linebackers are not making plays. You know who's making those plays? Our D-backs. We have play. I think the young guys need to play more. A lot of the young guys. Let's play somebody else. So they are making plays. Our DNs are making plays, Gary. They're stopping the run.
Who said they're not making plays?
No, you're saying you don't consider them the elite. You don't think they're going to do so well in the draft because they're not.
I didn't say what their draft status is going to be. I have no idea right now what their draft status is going to be.
So tell me what you say. You say they're not.
I didn't say no. I did not say that, Ross. I have not made any prediction on where Quincy Roche and Jalen Phillips are going in the draft because right now, as we're sitting here, I have no idea.
But you said they're not being they're not being dominant as far as dominant players on the team.
I don't feel they're dominating football games. No, I feel they're flashing. They're flashing on individual plays, but I don't feel that they're dominant players out there.
Well, Gary, every time we watch the game and these announcers are announcing their game, they're telling you how well they're playing because they're not just about getting sacked. They're getting quarterback hurries. They're getting run. They're getting tackles on run. They're everywhere all over the field. So they don't have to get sacked for them to be boosting their either their draft or their game stats or their quality.
Ross, we gave up 41 points in 3 quarters the other day. I don't think anybody's dominating. I don't think anybody's dominating anything right now.
You can't. No, because
is that fair?
No, because then you got to then after the game is over, you got to go to the grading system, and then you got to grade. So why do you put out a grading system then, Gary? Why do you put out a grading system if that's the only thing that you're going to pay attention? Why do you grade every player after the game?
Because it isolates on the players, and yes, I would agree that some players grade higher than others in individual games. Yes, but we're talking about changing a game. We're talking about changing a game, and I don't believe we have a player that does that.
Gary, it's time for you
De'Ara
to do
King
your homework and you always talk about me.
Would you agree that De'Ara King changes the game?
Yeah, but we're not talking about offense. We're talking about defense.
No, that's my point. But you would agree that De'Ara King changes the game, right, Ross?
Yes, he does. But you're calling out these two players.
You don't have a guy on defense that changes the game.
That's BS.
All right.
BS. Because they're dominating in other ways. Our defense is about to make some of these tackles.
If we had 11 of those guys, we'd be damn good.
Gary, you said it about Dallas, and he's playing in Seahawks. Gary, time for you to go do your homework, and you got to tell me. You didn't say this. You didn't let anybody know tonight how you felt about the election. You called it it's going to be a show. What did you think about that show?
What, the election?
Election night, yeah, because you say you didn't have a show, right? Because you wanted to go watch the show. What did you think about that show?
I thought it was a total shit show, but I think the whole thing's ridiculous. But I'm not here to talk politics.
I'm not interested in who you voted for. I'm just saying it was a shit show for some people, not for me. Anyway, Gary, time for you to go do your homework. Go do your homework before you, and then when I call you back next week, I have my answers ready. Talk to you.
All right. Goodbye. Oh, my God. All right, 563-999-3550, 563-999-3550. Hit the 1 on your keypad if you want to come on the show. Let's go to the 770. You're live on CaneSport Live.
Hey, Gary.
Yes, sir. I can, but you're a little fuzzy. Who's this? I'll come back to you. Get your sound straightened out. Let's go to the 865. You're live on CaneSport Live.
Hey, Gary. What's up, man? It's James.
Hey, what's up, James? How you doing this week?
Oh, buddy, I'm doing great. Listen, I kind of feel like I want to talk about the positives of the offense. I think everybody's pretty hammered the defense. And, I just don't know if people actually listen to what you say, because I think back to what your beginning shows before the season. You even said that this defensive personnel, you weren't too sure about the defense. and look who they played at the beginning of the year, and now look who they're playing. It kind of speaks for itself, man. I mean, so you were right. You were right. I don't know why everybody else is so surprised about this. So I mean, there's definitely been a drop off. There's been a drop off, and I was watching the linebackers on last Friday, and I mean, McLeod is what he is. I mean, he was a 3-star, right, Gary? Am I wrong with that?
He might have been a 4. I'd have to go back and look.
He might have been a 4. Okay, I thought he was the third weakest of the Pickney
he was
group or what have you. He was. Okay.
He was, but
right.
at the beginning, James, I thought he had the most potential of the 3. I really did, and I ended up being wrong. I ended up being wrong about that. He did not develop the way that I thought he would. I thought he had an NFL body, which he does, and he just has not developed for whatever reason. And I've talked about it with pro scouts, and you know, I've been very surprised that he has not developed better, and I was wrong about that. I said when those 3 kids came in as freshmen, I specifically said that I thought McLeod was going to end up being the best of the 3, and I was wrong.
Mm-hmm. I remember you saying that, and the thing is that I thought it too. I mean, you look at him; he looked like an Adonis out there compared to the other 2, or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But something didn't develop. You know, something just didn't happen there. And Jennings, I mean, he's been serviceable, but I mean, the thing is I'm grateful for what they've done, Gary, and what they are. But at the end of the day, I watched them out of position just get blown off the ball by offensive linemen by NC State. And I don't know how good NC State's offensive linemen are compared to the rest of the ACC, you know, but what I'm seeing is I'm watching it live in the game. But then I see Brooks come in. And Brooks, was right where he needed to be. He stopped. I think they got 6 yards the play before, and then Brooks goes in there, and it's only a gain of 2. He was right where he needed to be, and I was watching it, and I was like, we need more guys like that. Where is the speed from sideline to sideline? I mean, you were talking with Matt about how Butch and Garcia used to stay up at late and look at talent and pick guys. They met their needs well. And I just don't think that that's what's going on with the recruiting right now. I mean, I'm hoping that changes, and maybe you know something more than I do. But the thing is that Manny has not found the guys that definitely need to fit this system per se in terms of what he wants to do, because they're just they don't have the speed that they did a couple of years ago to get to the quarterback. I feel yes, Rousseau not being there hurt. And I think, and I want to ask you something, Gary, real quick, because you said at the beginning of the year, I think you predicted 8-2, 9-1 at the beginning of the year. Is that what you predicted?
I said the bar was 9, and I still feel that. I still feel that way. I'm not convinced we're going to make it through all these games and not lose again.
Me too.
Yeah,
now, my question is you said that Rousseau was good enough to maybe be a game changer for one of the games, you know, and so forth like that. If you did lose 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question is, what at this point we're right now, you know, now that game could be this Saturday. That game could be this Saturday, where you need a Rousseau to get on Hooker, the quarterback for BT, or you know, pressure the hell out of Howell at the end of the year for Carolina and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So those games maybe haven't happened yet, but I don't think that he makes a little bit more of a difference against Clemson, but I feel that the defensive line is probably what you've got, even though we've already agreed that they're not that great in the up front. But the back 7, I mean, they just, other than to Corey Couch and maybe Frierson, they just don't have it, Gary. I mean, Bolden can show up and so forth, but he got absolutely trucked by that offensive lineman. And I don't even think he really made a play the rest of the game. I mean, I don't remember him really standing out. Amari didn't get thrown out, which was progress. And Gervin Hall, I about wanted to strangle him because we have no punt returner. We have absolutely no punt returner, and I never thought that I would see that at the University of Miami, Gary, after all these years.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty surprising. I think they've kind of settled on Restrepo for that role, but he's stuck on the coronavirus quarantine list, so he might be back this week.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't want to see. I know that everybody's on the bandwagon. Rump's got to go. Baker's got to go. And I mean, well, here's the thing, though. We're 6-1 now. I know that Butch Davis made a hell of a change back in '98 when he got rid of Bill Miller. and brought in Shiano and so forth because he knew that the offense was good, but the defense with the players that they had were just not getting the job done. And he made a change. And that was a team that went 9-3 or 8, I think, 9-3, and they won a bowl game at the end of that year. And then they made the next jump, obviously. But does Manny does Manny think that he could do that to the guys on the staff? Because he's pretty much kept that defensive staff intact. He's made major upgrades on the offensive side of the ball as well. He needed to, and it's shown. But my question to you, Gary, is does he make a move like that? Does he even feel he needs to make a move like that? Should they finish 10-1 is my question to you.
I don't know. I mean, to me, those are his guys, and they're his handpicked guys, and I just don't understand how, you can't, what are you going to do? Go recycle the entire staff? We already redid the offensive side of the ball. You had a clean slate when you became head coach, and you made a decision to go with your guys, which is you can't argue with it. Everybody wants to go with their guys, but now you're going to decide they're not good enough and start making wholesale changes on defense too after you made wholesale changes on offense. I just don't know if I see him doing that. I don't know
exactly.
Exactly. I could see Blake Baker maybe leaving on his own. If he's frustrated, and doesn't feel like he has the control he wants or something. And I'm not saying that's the case, but I could see that in my mind, maybe one day happening. But I don't see, maybe Mike Rumpf goes to coach in the NFL. Who knows? But do I see him making wholesale changes on defense like he did on offense? No, I don't. I don't. I would be very surprised by that.
Exactly. And that's what this fan base needs to get through their head. As long as they're winning, he's not going to make any changes. The administration's not going to make a change with him. Everybody needs to get that out of their head. And honestly, right now, I'll tell you one thing. I'm enjoying the hell out of this season a lot more than last year. Last year was an absolute atrocious disaster piece of shit. This year has been fun. We're winning. We lost to Clemson, but the point of it is we've won what we've needed to. We beat the hell out of Florida State. I think we're going to beat the hell out of Virginia Tech coming up this Saturday. So that's two of your biggest rivals that you beat the crap out of, and that's the big goal. And obviously, hopefully, if we don't get a chance to go to the ACC championship, and if we do run the table, I hope that the Orange Bowl still considers us, and maybe we get to play and get a shot at the Gators or something like that. That'd be a nice thing. Now, before I get into a few more points I want to do before we get other callers on, I just want to sing the praises of De'Aaron King, because that young man played like a man this past Friday. He's been good all season, but he would not let us lose, Gary, and I have not seen that in a quarterback since Berlin or even Dorsey. I know people hated on Berlin when he was here, but you look back of what we've had at quarterback since Berlin, I think about how, yes, he was the wrong quarterback for the system that they tried to input him in, but I'll tell you, the guy had guts, and he fought, and he tried with everything that he could. And we have not had that at quarterback. Brad Kaya had his moments, Morris had his moments, but at the end of the day, we have not had a quarterback consistently that's actually a game changer. He can do it with his legs. He can do it with his arms. He's smart. He was dropping dimes out there that I have not seen from a Miami quarterback in a long, long time. And with the receivers that he's gotten without a spring practice to even get that timing down, some credit's got to be given where credit's due. And that was the home run by Manny to get that guy and Rhett Lashley, and the two of them together. I feel that De'Aaron is an extension of Rhett Lashley on that field. He's over there, yes, sir. Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. Now, that what was brought up by the last call about how Van Dyne and Nicosia aren't over there, I have no idea why, because heaven forbid anything. Those guys would be a deer in the headlights. So I just hope that the bubble that's been around De'Aaron continues to stay around him, especially these last few games. The offensive line, I thought, played their best game of the year. I could be wrong, maybe Florida State, but look who they were going up against over there. But I felt that the offensive line gelled this time. The running game, I was a little miffed by Don Chaney not playing more. Maybe you have a little bit of insight with that. And my other question to you is, are we going to see Brevin Jordan at all the rest of this year, or is he just basically done and going to be going to the NFL draft?
Does he play for Miami? So, I've never seen a guy miss more games in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I just at this point, and I'm going to keep saying it till I'm blue in the face, and I'm sorry if I annoy another callers when I say this. Mallory has to get 15 looks a game. 15 looks a game because he's out there, he's playing, and there's nobody that is shown to be able to cover him. And if Hartley keeps up this production, that's two key guys right there that can help you stretch the field and not have 8 in the box.
Well, on your comment on the running game, there's just not enough carries to go around. Like they probably ran King a little too much the other day, I would say. But you know, Cam Harris got 15 carries. Knighton got 5 and Chaney got 3. Just not enough. You know, it's hard to run 3 running backs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just hope that doesn't scare Franklin away, because I really would like him to be there as a guy that is a bigger back. You know, we don't have that in the system, and you might need that when you're playing up against a big defensive line and a team that you might need those short yards and so forth in a grinded out type game. And no disrespect to these guys, because I know Chaney's getting big as well. But the thing is that I just feel that we need to have a little bit of change of pace backs on there, and not the same kind of back, if that makes sense, Gary. That's just my opinion. I like a different type of – somebody brings something different to the table, and you run that stable.
Well, Chaney and Knighton, though, are pretty similar type runners, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess body type more I'm talking about more than anything. So body type, yeah. But I guess one last point, Gary. This cornerback thing. I mean, do we have anything? Maybe do we change Marshall's mind? I mean, Florida's still having a really good season, so he might stick with that commitment there. But is there anything that in the recruiting wise that maybe has changed because of Burns' decommitment, or are we really looking at the transfer portal maybe? Because I just am worried about those numbers with the depth and everything come next year.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think it could end up being the transfer portal, but like they dropped Burns. They clearly want better than that. Yeah, they want better than that for that spot. And I think it was a great move. I think they need to get better for that spot. They're still recruiting Markevious Brown over at IMG. I don't know what's going to happen there. You know, he'll tell coaches, I'm going to commit, and then he never does. Virginia Tech, Arkansas, Auburn, Ole Miss is in it. So we're not really sure what's going to happen there. There's a kid out of Texas that they've identified by the name of Marvin Covington, but we don't really know what to make of that. I mean, Miami was his first offer. He got offers afterwards from Houston and TCU. Might wait till February to sign. So we're not really like feeling that one so much. We'll see. But maybe they got something new in mind that we're not onto yet. You know, we're fishing around a little bit. But they definitely did not want Burns, and that was not a true decommitment. That was him letting him gracefully decommit. And a great move. They need a better player than that. So I thought that was a good move.
And I think just to bring it full circle, that's my whole point, that the back seven needs to get better. Just across the board, board.
And I think they're realizing that.
You mentioned that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Al Blades was steady at the beginning of the year, but these last 2 games, I mean, he's just been absolutely torched. You know, and great
kid, great attitude, average football player.
Absolutely. You know, and the thing is, you know, if they had gotten the other guys that he was being recruited with, you know, like say a Campbell or a Surtain, is he even on the field as a cornerback? Is he a safety? I mean,
he didn't start for his high school team. He didn't start for his high school team. No.
He didn't start for STA.
No, he played behind Surtain in high school. All right, James, let me let you go because I got other guys that want to get on. Thanks for being part of the show, and give us a call next week.
You bet, bud. Bye.
All right. This edition of CaneSport Live is brought to you in part by JFQ Lending. With interest rates below 3%, there has never been a better time to lock in a low fixed interest rate on your mortgage. And you'll never need to think about refinancing again if you call the guys at JFQ Lending. You set it, you forget it. At JFQ Lending, you're guaranteed to get the highest level of customer service from our main man, Kyler Kuppelman. You've seen him on the message boards at CaneSport.com. He's always ready and willing to help. JFQ Lending has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and over 3,000 5-star reviews. So you want to save some money on your mortgage? Give Kyler Kuppelman a call today. His number is 323-607-8802. That's 323-607-8802. Or you can email Kyler directly at kkoppelman@jfqlending.com. That's KKOPPELMAN@jfqlending.com. And all that information's on the message boards if you didn't catch it here. And JFQ Lending is an equal access lender licensed in over 40 states. So no matter where you live, they are ready and willing to help any Canes fan out there that wants to take a look at their mortgage and see if they could save a little bit of money each month. All right, 563-999-3550, 563-999-3550. You hit the 1 on your keypad. If you want to come on the show, we're going to take another shot at the 770. You're live on CaneSport Live.
Gary.
Yes, sir. Who's this?
If you ever, this is Steve in Atlanta. If you ever do that again, I'm gonna come down there and I'm gonna deal with you. I don't play them games. No, I'm just joking.
What the hell are you talking about? Go ahead. What's up? What's up, Steve?
When you put me on hold.
No, your sound was messed up, Steve. I had to give you a chance to get it straightened out.
No, I had you on speakerphone. I'm working. You know I drive trucks. But anyway,
yep.
let's go to your theory. Your theory is that all the players are. What you were saying about the players, they're below average and they're.
I didn't say below. I said average. Come on, man.
But
don't put words in my mouth.
You saying the evaluation is going wrong on the players, right?
What I said is Steve, let me clarify what I said before you comment. What I said was our evaluation of players needs to be significantly better than what it's been for a very long time. And we have a lot of very good players on the team and always will. You got a huge advantage here when you're recruiting from a South Florida base. There's a lot of good players in South Florida. So Miami will always have a good roster. What Miami has been missing through this 17, 18-year run of mediocrity has been enough elite players. That's my opinion.
Okay. All right.
Talking to your speaker, though, Steve. We can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me?
We can, but you got to talk into your speaker.
I got on the headset. I drive.
Much better. Go. Yes, we can. Go.
All right. Okay. So my theory is, you say for the last few years we've been underevaluated. I would counter that with for the last 20 years we underevaluated our athletic director. We have under-evaluated every coach that we have put in place. Manny Diaz should have never been hired. I don't know, how do you expect players to get better or to get better players when you have coaches who have been under-evaluated and are below average? So how do you expect to have above average play on the field? The offense, you have 3 offensive coordinators on that offensive roster. Of course, they are doing better. The offensive line, they can pass block. I'm still pissed off with the run blocking because we have 4 good backs. If they had the blocking, they can get more yards, they can get more carries. Back to the evaluations of the coaches. So Diaz shouldn't have never got the job. And what he do? He goes and pulls Al Golden. He hires all his buddies on the defensive side of the ball except one, which is Mike Rupp, and I'm very disappointed in Mike Rupp. But I'm very disappointed in Banda. Who is Banda? I'm going to let you answer that question. What was his how did he get to Miami? And what did he come? Where did he come from? What coaching tree he was plucked off of by Manny?
It's a Manny tree. He was Manny. He was he was a GA, I think, under Manny at Mississippi State.
So he's a zero. He's a zero. So that's That's a terrible hire for the. That's a bad decision by Manny.
He's a guy that was familiar. Wait, Steve. He's a guy that was very familiar with Manny's defense, he's a decent recruiter, probably the best recruiter on the staff.
We don't need recruiters. We need coaches.
Well, you need both.
That's
you need both.
Okay, let's go back to when you started, Gary. You there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. You don't cut me off because this is gonna get good tonight. Let's go back to Liberty and Virginia Tech. You said Liberty stunned Virginia Tech. No, they didn't. Virginia Tech knew Liberty was undefeated. Hugh Freeze was a good coach before he got to Liberty. He was run out of Ole Miss for some issues that took place, little disciplinary problems. They had to let him go. So he took a step back, but being the good coach that he is, he went to Liberty with all people with 0 stars to 2 stars, and he done beat Syracuse, and he done beat Virginia Tech at home. So don't tell me our coaches it's our talent, it's our coaches. Look at the offense. Look at those receivers. 3 weeks ago, we was ripping those receivers. Lastly, in the coach get together, they get on the boards. Whatever they did in practice, you see a whole different thing going on. Manny has been coaching this defense. He had his boys for 5 years in place, and they're always the same old thing. 1 week they might look all right, but they're very inconsistent. Some of them are good, some of them ain't. That's what happens when you have a team where they're not getting developed by the coaches. You just have kids with talent who can show up and play, and then you have teams who need to be. You have players who need to be coached and need to be developed. And if they ain't getting it, it ain't gonna happen, buddy. And they're not getting it on that defensive side of the ball from none of the positions. Look at how and look at the strength coach that you like. He's not getting it. Where did he come from? What's his claim to fame?
He was at Temple before he came here. He came from Temple.
So Manny met him at Temple and brought him to Miami. Really, that's what type of strength coach we need? A guy coming from Temple to try to get us back to winning titles? This ain't about being happy about a 6-1 record. This not a happy time. It's good to be 6-1, but remember, Mark Richt got to be 10-1, and then we saw what happened with that because all of those games that he won before he got to 10-1, we had a shot at losing every last one of them just about. We were never a great team. We was just, we was getting lucky. Balls was bouncing our way, and then, when it didn't bounce our way, we ended up losing the last 3 games, and that's what's gonna happen this year. We got a good offensive coordinator. He can hold it down for if we put up 30 points, 40 points, we should win that game, right?
Yeah.
So I think Manny needs, like you say, Manny ain't going to fire them guys. You talking about he's sitting because those his guys, that's the same thing Al Golden did. And you wanted Al Golden to get rid of D'Onofrio, right? So Manny should put the team first and not his boys because you got fans who want to win, and we don't give a crap. We don't give a rat's about his boys and him firing. You go through all of them till you get the right guys in there to win some championships. And if he don't do it, he needs to go along with them. And that's the bottom line. I'll get this shit together this week. And I'm out. Have a good night, Gary. Thanks for letting me vent.
All right, Steve. Give us a call next week. Let's go to the 786. You're live on CaneSport Live.
Gary, my friend, how are you?
Hey, what's up, everything? How you doing, man?
Another crazy day with this weather down here. It's been
not as crazy as this show tonight. This show tonight's been lit.
You got a lot of angry people, man. You got a lot of people that are upset, huh?
Yeah, I don't know, man. What do you got? Go ahead, roll.
Imagine if we were 3-3 or 2-4, which could easily be the case if we didn't have De'Aaron King.
Oh, no question.
Anyway,
no doubt.
Gary,
I think people, and you know what? I think people see that, and I think that's part of what you're hearing. I mean, week after week, like I think people recognize like what that the Eric King is, right now the difference between 6-1 and maybe 4-3. And, I think that's a little concerning to people, but like, look, I mean, my feeling is it is what it is. Enjoy the 6-1,
It's not about what you don't have, it's what you do have. Because what you do have is a chance, you're still in this to have a decent season. And it exceeded my expectations for this year. I told you I thought the most that they win would be 7. And I spoke with you at length way back in the summer, one of the first shows you had, about the impact of losing Greg Rousseau and how the kids that we do have are, as you mentioned earlier tonight to a couple of callers, are difference makers. And I know Ross is very upset with that. Some of the other callers are upset with that too. You don't have a guy that you have to say, I got a scheme to stop that guy if you're an offensive coordinator. There's nobody on the defensive side of the ball that you have to do that for. So really what you have to do is understand what you do have. We've had so many miscommunications in the secondary, and we've been so passive to start games the last couple of weeks, and you ask yourself why. Well, it's right there in front of us. It's a personnel issue. You don't have great talent and length and speed in the second and third level of our defense. We just don't. If we had those things, our front four's production would be better, believe it or not, because they can cover better back there. But when you're having to now almost go 60-40 zone to man, you're seeing the true identity of this defense. And I don't know why every week when I had the fortune to come on the show or listen to the show, people are saying, Blake Baker doesn't know what he's doing. Listen, this is Manny Diaz's defense. Manny Diaz is every day with that staff. They create the game plan together. Everything's run through him. Pretty much what Blake is a caretaker, and so is like who's the co-defense coordinator, Pat Key or Banda. I mean, it's pretty simple. Manny's running this defense. He didn't magically just go ahead and say, I'm taking over the fourth quarter. No, he didn't do that. If you watch what they did the fourth quarter, they changed the type of blitz package they utilized. They were able to get to the quarterback one time and hit him. After that, the quarterback wasn't as effective. Look at that interception he threw.
Yeah,
that was what's called a reaction to pass
to pressure,
getting hit in the mouth.
Yep, he was pressured,
and you want to get rid of the ball. Do you guys realize that the guy in the flat on the opposite boundary was wide open? He never saw him because he panicked and threw a bad ball, which created the interception. But what caused that was the pressure. So what boggles all of us as traditional Cane fans that we are, Gary, and listen, everyone that's called in tonight understands football. Maybe with certain different levels of expertise and schemes and all those things, but we all know football. And what we can see is we're not starting games aggressively. And Gary, you know why we're not? We don't have the personnel.
Don't have the personnel and getting beat early in the game, which which is not going to inspire coaches to take more chances.
And you might say, well, I don't want to die a slow death. Well, I don't want to get murdered in a second either. So
correct.
That's why they're having to pick. It's very difficult to pick your spots when to be ultra aggressive and take that risk. And that's what he's having to do. Your explanation of what we have is totally on. I said this earlier in the show. And it is what it is. We're an average defense at best. Be all honest here. I said this a couple of weeks ago. We're a top 15 team maybe, but really we're a top 25 team, and that could be up for debate based on what we have. So when you get to the root of the problem, we keep talking about recruiting. Gary, it's not that we haven't recruited elite athletes, elite talent. They're just not coming. They're not coming here. And when you see, as a kid, I'm a junior, and I'm watching you. You played at St. Thomas Aquinas with me, and you were a 4-star. You went to UM, and you're horrible. Okay? Or you're not. You're maybe an average college football player at best. And so does somebody else and somebody else. Why am I going to go there when they don't develop and it doesn't work out? So, anyone that's recruiting against us has an easy argument. And that's why I keep mentioning to you, as much as I love Mike Rump, and my goodness, I was destroyed on the boards. Something that impacted me so much that I stopped even participating on the boards, and whatever, we can get into other issues. But the whole point is not a recruiter. He's not a contemporary collegiate football coach at a blue blood program where you have to have nothing but, hey, you're great. Hey, you're wonderful. He can't do those things. He's never done those things. And if you think about the kid from Alabama, who Alabama dropped him, I mean, some of the things he's mentioned on social media, from what I've seen, he just totally feels that Mike Rump's a total asshole. And it's sad to hear that. But that's the truth. That's who he is. He's not going to change. And, Gary, we've mentioned this. He's had job offers before in the league, but that's not what's best for him and his family. And that's why he's chosen this route. So at the end of the day, I think after this season, if things don't go well, recruiting-wise, and we still have defensive backs trying to dislodge a ball out of a wide receiver's hand in coverage, which that's getting old, if that's the case, then it's time to make a change. And I've told you who my preference has always been. And T-Rob was interested many years. 2 years ago, T-Rob was very interested. And there was no way, as you mentioned to me, there's no way that he's going to do it. And I said, listen, this is a perfect time to make the change because he's made all these other changes, but didn't want to do it. So there's going to have to be a change there eventually. And the last thing I want to touch upon, and Stephen mentioned this, about the coaches. University of Miami is still a nickel and dime program. It's a nickel and dime operation. Have we made strides? Yeah.
I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all. You got three guys on the defensive side of the ball on coordinator contracts. They got 5 coordinators on payroll right now if you add Dan Enos.
I understand
that's not nickel and dime everything. Now, maybe they're not spending the money wisely, but, that's not nickel and dime.
Blake Baker is definitely not a top 25 defense coordinator in terms of making money in the country. He's not.
No.
Mike Rump is not. Okay.
But you got him, Banda, and Patkey all making coordinator salaries on defense.
Yeah. Well, he's given, and they're still not top 25 either, and none of them deserve it. You've got to be able to have someone that says, I want him, and him. Hey, Corey Raymond, I'm going to offer you 1.75 plus a home in the Gables, which you can have 2 years after your contract is done here, which is done everywhere, which is kind of the deal that Randy had. We had that house for 3 years, until 3 years ago, Corey Gables that he still had. So, listen, things can be done, but you've got to do it with the right people, and we've always failed to do so. And why have we failed to do so? Because we've never had the guy, the right guy in this position. Now, hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully it all comes together, and hey, I'm rooting for my kids. I'm rooting for Manny. I'm rooting for him because that's who I am. I'm a fan at heart. That's not going to change. But the reality is we've made some progress, but we're still not there, Gary. And the only way to get there is to keep winning. You got to keep winning. You got to develop these kids. And these kids, they have to be responsible. They have to hold each other accountable.
And you got to hit on more recruits. You got to hit on more recruits. You got to hit on your evaluations.
Think about what's coming in this year. James Williams.
Yep.
Leonard Taylor.
Yep.
Melo Brinson.
Yep.
Those are 3 alphas. Gary, did you watch any of those games on the internet? I watched.
I saw how well Romello Brinson played. Absolutely.
And Tim Burns got a deflection interception, but Tim Burns is basically Al Blades, junior year. That's what he looks like to me.
But he's at half the size.
Half the size, and he's got bad hips. Yep. I mean, Al Blades was at St. Thomas Aquinas, Gary, not Heritage.
I know that.
Year, and I can't even tell you the name of the kid that played ahead of him at Heritage.
One was Certain, I think. I'm trying to remember who the other one was.
No, Certain was at Heritage.
Oh, I'm trying to think who. No. You're right.
That's the point. But that's the point, Gary. Identify the kid that beat him out.
There were two of them.
Yeah, and they're obscure kids because they're nowhere on the national landscape. We say, oh yeah, so and so playing for Alabama, or he's playing for A&M or Clemson. No, those kids didn't go to those type of programs. So that's when we knew we were in trouble. But at this stage, all we need to do is accept the fact we're not going to create turnovers on defense, very little. We're not going to be able to have too many big plays defensively, period. And our front four, by the fourth quarter comes around, those kids are exhausted. Roche's exhausted. Phillips is exhausted. When the kids that come in behind them, like a Cam Williams, the touchdown that Clemson scored against us where the offensive linemen kind of fall down, and then it's a throwback to the weak side, and they come back around the gate, and they go in and they score. Every time that play has been run against us, we've given up a touchdown. And who's playing right defensive end? Cam Williams. Okay, kids that are learning. You don't have the depth that you need. You don't have the experience, but what you do have is a chance. And that's why we are not playing aggressive, Gary. And we're not going to play aggressive defensively until we have to pick the right spot. And we got to get lucky. We got to execute, too.
By the way, on Al Blades, I said Certain. I misspoke. One of them was Asante Samuel, and I'm trying to figure out who the other one was. I can't remember the kid's name.
But Asante had the other side. Asante didn't take his job. Somebody else took Blades' job, and I can't remember the kid's name. But he didn't go. He was a year. I think he was a year younger than Blades, and he had transferred in, and he went to either Michigan or he went somewhere. He just did nothing. I mean, he hasn't done anything. And that's what I'm remembering. Hopefully, I'm wrong on that too. But going into Saturday, if you tell me, okay, Lloyd, how are you going to go ahead and stop their defense? I'm going to run the ball on Virginia Tech as much as possible with two tight ends because from what I've seen in the last couple of days, I've been watching as much film as I can on them. The opposite. We need to go fast. We need to go slower against them. Their ends are long guys, but they're not very big. Their defensive tackles aren't very big. Their linebackers are kind of slow. So I think it's okay to match up with some wheel routes, get the running backs the ball, get Cam going early. I think we need to go ahead and attack their defense that way by slowing it down just a little bit even more, which, as you mentioned earlier, Gary, aids your defense because you don't have what you're used to having on defense. So that definitely works to your benefit. And second of all, I really feel that we need to get, if Brev is going to play, as many plays as possible where he's not the primary guy, but he's the secondary guy. Because what we're seeing is the way defenses are playing us, I think that's the best route to go. We're going to face better corners than we faced the last two games. You mentioned how poor NC State was in the back end. Well, let me tell you, Virginia's not very good in the back end either.
No, they were worse.
Yeah, so we want to find out how good Mike Harley has really gotten. We'll find out Saturday because Vautech secondary, they're young, but they're pretty damn good. And they're long and they're physical. And they do the same thing we're kind of doing on defense. They kind of give you everything up front and give you the flats are open and they give you the short stuff, which hopefully, again, works to our benefit if we're smart with our game plan. Defensively, Gary, the quarterback for Vautech is huge. He's strong. He's
very good. I've been very impressed with him.
I think 2 games ago he went 10 for 10. So
yeah, but where he really kills you is with his running ability is off the charts. He brings a lot to the table.
And how do you counter that, Gary? What would you do?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a really bad matchup for our defense, but we'll see what happens.
I'm almost hoping that Flag gets most of the reps at middle linebacker, because I can tell you the last 3 games, what we've seen out of that position has been horrific.
Yeah, but what you don't know is if that kid is ready for that. Like, to go on the road at Virginia Tech and now suddenly be a starter, I don't know, man. Well, he's a true freshman.
I wouldn't start him.
Yeah, he's a true freshman. Though if he can actually play this week, which hopefully he will be able to, I could see them putting him out there and seeing how he does, like they were doing in some of those games earlier this year. But it's asking a lot for a kid like that to go on the road and play. So we'll see. All right, man, I gotta let you go. There's a bunch of guys here that want to get on here in the last hour. So thanks as always for being part of the show. All right, before we run out of time, let me attack a few of these questions that were submitted on the message boards at CaneSport.com because there were some really good ones. This team continues to struggle with preparation, both mental and physical, with national spotlight games. In my opinion, that struggle is a poor reflection on Manny Diaz and further highlights the biggest issue right now with this team. Manny comes across as being soft on players. They look underprepared, both mentally and physically. Boy, some pretty harsh opinions there. What's my opinion on this issue? And above all, can this issue be remedied in part? Well, I personally have never tried to claim that Manny Diaz was one of the top coaches in the country or anything like that. But why does it always have to be the coach's fault when another team has successful plays? That NC State team the other day had a few pretty decent players, and we have a tendency here to overvalue our own. For example, are any of our three running backs as good as we feel they are, and they are extremely good, are they right now better than that number 7 kid, I think his last name was Knight, on NC State, who didn't even get used? Like, I think he had 12 carries or whatever, and they kept him pretty much under control. But I would argue that their coaches err by not having him more involved than he is. What I saw was guys getting beat for the first 3 quarters. Now, in support of the question, I will tell you something else I felt I saw. I felt I saw Nesta Silvera, for example, playing considerably harder in the fourth quarter than appeared he was playing earlier in the game. Now, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. It looked to me like he was playing a lot harder in the fourth quarter with the game on the line, and it seems the entire defense picked up its game in the fourth quarter. And when you look at 8 plays for 6 yards after giving up more than 400 yards in the first 3 quarters, that would seem to suggest that something changed, and maybe also NC State didn't play as well as they played earlier in the game. Now, the soft on players argument, I think, can probably be backed up a bit with facts if you look at the last 2 seasons and some of the things that have gone on. But for the most part, I think this is an above average team that is not going to look good all of the time. And that's really no different than the greater majority of teams around college football, including teams this year like Georgia, which people thought might be a national title contender that is clearly not. And, a lot of teams fit that category, and I think that's where we are right now. And I think that we have a tendency to bring ourselves back to the pack in the ACC and have a lot of these life and death games where anybody can win them. And we have great seasons right now when we win the better share and we get the breaks. We did in 2017. We are so far in 2020. We'll see where it leads us here down the stretch, and hopefully the stretch will be better than it was in 2017. Next, does winning and recruiting cure all with the current staff? We saw what Manny did with more talent. We see what Lashley can do with a below average offensive line and one really good quarterback that's not even a top NFL talent. Well, I think winning and recruiting is a great first step. Look, there's no guarantees that Tyler Van Dyke will perform even close to the level that we're seeing D'Eriq King play at right now, which in all honesty is saving the entire program. I don't think anybody would argue that we're not 6-1 without D'Eriq King. But winning can lead to better recruiting, which Matt Shodell was talking about earlier tonight, and that can lead to more consistent winning. And at that point, you got to be able to start recruiting elite dudes from around the state and the country, and that will determine whether the program can become a year-to-year contender in the ACC and start to become more relevant on the national stage. All right, let's get back to your calls, and let's go out now to the 727. You're live on CaneSport Live.
Hey, Gary, it's Jake from Steve.
What's up, Jake? How you doing this week?
Doing good. A couple of things I wanted to talk to you. When you were talking about recruiting earlier, I actually completely disagree with the. I know how Rivals is set up. You got your top 250, and that generally sets up as your 4-star caliber, and then you got your top 30 that generally wind up as 5-star. To me, that actually reflects the NFL. When you're recruiting a 4-star, you're hoping that kid's going to be an NFL caliber talent, and a 5-star, you're hoping that kid's going to be a first-round caliber talent. So I don't know that I agree with that the star system is necessarily out of whack. You look at the NFL drafts roughly 270 players every year. That's how many 4-star kids you have. So, it's a projection. It's not perfect.
Yep.
But with that being
said,
I think it's kind of commensurate to, to what, what it is. But
the only difference I would say, Jake, the one difference I would say is like the NFL draft, you're right, it's 250 deep or whatever. But if a guy's drafted in the 7th round, he doesn't come to camp with a lot of expectations. Nobody's expecting him to really make the team. Some of them do, some of them don't. In college, if a kid is a 4-star player, we're expecting him to come in here and be an impact guy, a starter, an extremely good player.
I think that's Miami's problem. That's Miami's problem is that we think all these freshmen are going to come in and save us, and it's like, give him some time. Even, who knows if Pope will turn it around or, he's been playing pretty good the last couple of games. But, to think receiver is one of those positions, maybe freshman, sophomore year you could really turn up the juice. Running back, we've seen Chaney and Knighton play some quality games. But if we think, I hear people like, oh, where's Jalen Rivers? What, you think a freshman's going to turn our O-line around? Get real. That's crazy. Most teams. So look at some of the best teams in the country right now. Florida, Alabama. Florida has, you're talking, they've got 4 seniors starting on their line. They've got 3, they're one other guy who's an underclassman is a junior. He's not an underclassman. He's a junior. That's how you get a winning offensive line. Not what we've been putting on the field. Last year we had 4 underclassmen playing. That's not a winning offensive line. So, it's just it's our caliber of expectation, really.
Mm-hmm.
To me. Anyway, that was just kind of a minor point that I wanted to bring up. One of the things I was thinking, everybody's been ragging on Baker, and I'm kind of in your camp that he's an extension of Manny Diaz, but to me, I don't see the production. And here's the thought I had the other day. I don't know if this has been discussed at all before, but you had talked a couple weeks ago how we got to do something with Ed Reed eventually. He ain't just going to stay around at that position. What if they actually bumped Banda? You just kind of let Blake Baker walk off into the sunset. You bump Banda to D coordinator because, again, this is all just an extension of Manny Diaz's offense or defense, I should say. Banda probably knows everything, if not more, about running it than Baker does. Banda's actually, coaching-wise, he's solid. Recruiting-wise, he's solid. And, to me, if it's an extension of Manny Diaz, so I guess the next part of that
they all have the same role, Jake. Jake, they're all in it together.
No, but here's my thought. You switch Patkey to linebacker coach because actually I think Patkey's been decent. A lot of people trash on him, but special teams other than the punt return situation's pretty good. But so anyway, you move Ed Reed to safeties coach because I think that's a game changer in recruiting because he has limited contact with these kids. You put him loose, get him in homes, stuff like that. That's going to be tough on the trail to beat.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the impact that guy's having with recruits, I think it's big. And if you could actually fully unleash that without the restrictions, I think you're talking a different ballgame there in the secondary.
I could see that happening potentially if Ed Reed wants to do it, and then Banda finding a different role. I could see it.
Well, I thought he could coach strikers too. I mean, because that's kind of a glorified safety role.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways they could go. If they wanted to bring Ed Reed on the coaching staff full time, there's some, somebody obviously would have to leave, but they could find ways to make it work. What else you got, Jake?
What's that?
What else you got tonight?
Yeah, I was so with with Clemson losing this weekend. To me, look at what they've got. Losing Trevor Lawrence is big, but I think one of the big things people that middle linebacker, that Skalski kid, losing him is going to be bad for their defense. That kid really, and he ate us alive. I don't know if that gives us an opening with him leaving this year, but to me, I don't know. So I guess to the next point with that, to me, what I think with King going pro, tell me if there's any validity to this thinking, but he's on a hot streak. There's no doubt about it. He's got a hot hand, but he doesn't really have a marquee win. And if you look at guys in his caliber, and I'm more talking about the small mobile quarterbacks. You got Kyler Murray, you got Russell Wilson may not fall into that category, but he's a pretty late round pick. But Jalen Hurts, some of the smaller, more mobile quarterbacks, even Tua could maybe even fall into that category. He's only about 6 feet tall, but those guys all had big marquee wins. To me, I don't know if he's draftable until he puts up a big game against big competition, and that's kind of why, I don't know. I hate to. I mean, I want him back in the worst way, because I think one more year with that kid could really, really change this program around in just the trajectory. You talk about maybe having 2 back-to-back 10-win seasons. That changes the ball game for recruiting, for other things with the program, just the overall attitude, I think, and just the leadership there. But to me, I think what he's missing, and what might be the thing that brings him back, is when NFL teams look at him, yeah, he's beating the crap out of lesser competition, but he was pretty pedestrian when it came to Clemson. If a guy of his stature is going to get drafted and he wants to play QB, to me, I think that's the thing. Is he, maybe it had happened in a bowl game, or if we did get to the ACC championship game, but without that marquee win, he's going nowhere in the NFL draft. And to me, that's a selling point that you can tell him, hey, we should return most of our team next year. You got Alabama, number 1, first game, and that's your spot there. That's where you make your statement. You put up 400 yards on Alabama, you're going to have a lot of NFL scouts looking at you. You didn't do so hot against Clemson. Redeem it. I don't know what your thinking is on that.
Nothing really. I mean, yeah, I just think it is. It kind of is what it is,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. The penalties, those things, killing me. Every week we just keep shooting ourselves in the foot, giving away 100 yards every week, free yardage.
Yeah,
that's crazy. But we beat that dead horse enough. But yeah, that's all I got for you this week.
All right, Jake.
Great
give us a call next
always.
week.
Yep.
We'll see what happens Saturday.
Hopefully with a win.
You got it, man. Thanks for being part of it. All right, a couple more questions. Who are the dudes from the currently committed 2021 class? Recruiting is key. Knighton and Chaney look to be major factors from last year's class. They were the Dade and Broward best running backs, respectively. I won't call the O-line recruits from last year elite because they haven't taken the reins immediately, but they were highly touted, and that is rare for O-line anyway. Linebackers better than what we recruited. Since Shaq, Flag looks good. Who are the dudes for 2021 that will turn the corner? All right. I think you have to hope that James Williams unquestionably is, and I think you have to hope that Leonard Taylor is that kind of recruit. They look like they have that kind of potential. But let me qualify something first. And I agree that Knighton and Chaney look like the top performers from this class to this point. But notice for the most part, they aren't really impacting the final result. and that's not unusual for almost every freshman. We'll have to see how guys like Jalen Rivers and Chance Williams develop, but are we really ready to compare Corey Flagg to Shaq Quarterman? I mean, come on. I mean, you can't compare a kid who has played a few plays as a freshman. Yes, he's flashed and he looks like he has potential, but you can't start comparing him to a guy that started for 4 years. You just can't. So we just have to see how things go the next couple of years, which I feel very certain that Manny Diaz is going to get to take this program to the next level. And, we'll see how it goes. Is Bubba Bolden injured or dating a swimsuit model or something like that? He was balling early and then just fell off the map. I'm seeing the same thing. And it looks to me like he is playing with some kind of physical limitation. He does not look as fast as he did earlier in the year. He's been a different player the past few weeks and, looked a little lost at times against NC State. Yeah, I don't think that's something that he or anybody is going to admit to or discuss for obvious reasons, but totally agree that Bubba Bolden does not look like the same dude that we saw at the beginning of the year. Is there any recruiting plan for cornerbacks? I think that the decommitment of Tim Burns was a positive and a clear signal that Miami is looking to move in a different direction at cornerback. I mean, let's be honest, it's been pretty clear that that's a position that needs a talent upgrade. I would not be surprised if they took a look at the transfer portal there if Markevious Brown doesn't pan out. That's what I would do. Maybe even if Brown does choose to come, I'm not sure I wouldn't hit the portal for a quality corner to fortify that position. As a follow-up, there was a question about Manny promoting Banda to DC and maybe replacing Baker and Mike Rumpf. I think it's way too early to discuss that. I don't see Banda replacing Baker. They're like 1A and 1B right now. But like I said earlier, Banda makes a coordinator salary. If they have the kind of season that it looks like they're going to have, I'm not sure Manny would be looking to replace anybody, but that doesn't mean that like a Baker couldn't leave to go to a situation where he might have a little more control than he does the way things are set up here. That wouldn't shock me if that were to happen one day. It wouldn't shock me if Mike Rumpf moved on to something else one day. So there's a lot of things that could happen, and we'll see. But it's a little early to start speculating on what might happen on the coaching staff. Manny did a good job last year of addressing weaknesses of the team. He fired Enos and brought in Lashley, addressed weaknesses with great transfer portal players. What are this year's glaring weaknesses, and will Manny address them? The poster's opinion is that it's recruiting and player development. Is Manny going to bring in somebody to help the staff identify recruits? I don't think so, because he rejected Alonzo Highsmith, who was a 20-year NFL personnel guy. I felt strongly that he could have benefited by bringing Alonzo in. He chose to not do that. I don't know what he's going to do. I mean, obvious needs are on the offensive line, maybe quarterback if King departs and they don't feel Van Dyke is ready. Maybe, you could use another big-time wide receiver, a cornerback for sure, like we said, a linebacker, a defensive tackle. There's needs everywhere on this football team. And right now they're being covered up by a weak schedule. So I'm not sure how active they're going to be in the transfer portal this year. A lot may depend on guidance from the NCAA on scholarship numbers. But make no mistake, this is a football team that could get better in pretty much every area. And I think anybody that's looking at it differently is, being a little bit, I don't know if deceived is the right word, but maybe looking at it through a little bit of green and orange glasses. I see it as a team that can be better in a lot of areas. At times, NC State had 5 guys in the box, and we still didn't run the ball or run it effectively. What's going on? Is the O-line that bad that 6 can't block 5? Well, I think you just answered your own question. Yeah, they're not very good run blockers. And, you watched De'Ara King the other night throw for 431 yards. If you were Rhett Lashley, why would you dial that back? So, the last couple of weeks we've had a big speed edge with the secondaries of Virginia and NC State. I think that's predicated a little bit more of a commitment to the passing game than Lashley would normally go with. I think he was about 50-50 last week. And that's limiting the opportunities for the running backs and the running game. And then when they are getting opportunities, there's not often a lot of room to run. All right, 563-999-3550. You hit the 1 on your keypad if you want to come on the show. Let's go to the 386. You're live on CaneSport Live.
Hey, Gary, how we doing?
Doing great. Who's this?
All right, it's Willie again.
Hey, what's up, Willie? Talk to us.
All right. Once again, awesome show. Hey, I've called into your show several times, and I usually try to keep it around 2 minutes. I know other callers are trying to get on. I may go a tad bit over tonight, but
we'll give you 3. Go.
I heard you say earlier that when Manny was defensive coordinator, that teams ran rough shots over us, and I don't recall that. So I'm trying to figure out, what are you referring to? I felt like the defense was much better then than it is now when he was coordinator. I'm not saying they didn't have bad games, but what are you referring to? Because I don't recall.
I'm referring back to a 20-year body of work as a coordinator, and there's like any other guy that's there's good games and bad games. Even the best sometimes have bad games, and Manny defenses have always been so-so. Like I don't think anybody considered him, even when Mark Richt hired him. Nobody was considering Manny an elite defensive coordinator. He was just one of the guys in college football. He bounced around a little bit. Mississippi State twice, got fired at Texas, went to Louisiana Tech. Had several jobs coming up before he got the Texas job, and he always was considered a good defensive coordinator. But I've never heard anybody refer to him as elite, or anything like that. And that's why. I think you have to have realistic expectations.
Well, here's when you agree or disagree. Here's when I saw Miami defense start to change. The 3 years when Manny was coordinator, here's when I saw them start to change defensively. Is when they went to this striker. They brought this striker position into the scheme of things. You agree or disagree?
Some people like that defense. Some people don't. I don't have any strong opinion either way. I think it's worked well for them here.
No.
You like it or don't like it? You like it or you don't like it?
I don't. I'd rather have three linebackers on the field.
Okay.
3 physical, fast linebackers.
Yes, like a lot of people feel that way.
Okay, second question. There's a sack machine playing defensive end at Miami Northwestern named Patrick Payton. Are we trying to recruit this guy?
I don't believe so. Not at the moment. We have not heard that.
No. Any news, any particular reason why, anything you've heard?
Don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, here's the thing. Here's the biggest problem I have with the current Miami Hurricane team. I had them going 10-1 at the beginning of the season, but in the regular season, they are now looking like an 8-3 team, and I'll tell you why. This is my personal opinion. As the season go along, we don't look like a team that improves as the season go along. I mean, we don't look like a team that's on the verge of doing something great.
No, we're just trying to survive, right? We're just trying to survive the season.
Okay.
But they're doing a good job. But they're doing a good job of it, right? I mean, they're 6-1. I mean, they didn't have a chance against Clemson. They didn't have a chance against Clemson. But I think it's good that they played Clemson, because what's the point of going through a whole season playing the NC States of the world? You don't really understand. Like you have an inflated sense of self-value that doesn't do you any good, because you're convincing yourself that you're something that you're not. At least you get your butt kicked by Clemson, you took your shot, and now you have a realistic outlook on your program, and you need to get better, and you get rid of the Tim Burnses on the recruiting class, and you reach higher than that. And I think that's a positive. Some people don't like to take losses. I think playing the best teams and losing can be turned into a positive, because it makes you realize what you really are.
Okay, one other thing I want to get your opinion on. I think we all would agree that Ed Reed has a ton of football knowledge, and he probably has a desire to be a coach one day. What are the pros and cons of taking a chance and making him your D coordinator?
Oh, you can't do that to him right now. I mean, you got to let him get, he's never been a coach. I mean, you got to let him learn what coaching is about. It's different than playing. You can't, you could just take a guy like him and make him a defensive coordinator, but I don't know that it would go very well.
Oh, okay. Well,
you don't need to do that. Make him the DB coach. Make him the safety coach.
The last thing I have a problem with, is it everybody else or is it just me? In my opinion, Notre Dame gets preferential treatment. How do you explain the fact that we play Virginia at home, win by 5 points, and fall? They play Louisville at home, win by 5 points, and move up. How do you explain that?
Notre Dame does get preferential treatment when they're winning. There's no question about it. They're a traditional name. They have a lot of support throughout the country, and I don't think there's any question that there would be a Notre Dame bias when they're winning.
Okay, Gary, I've been watching college football for 40 years. I see something that I have never seen as long as I've been watching college football. How do you explain we're the number 9 ranked team in the nation? We're playing a team that's not ranked, one game over 500, and we're the underdog. How do you explain that?
Road game.
I've never seen that. I've never seen a top 10
We have been playing great football. You were going on the road. The first thing, when people are looking at a team that's an average team, which, we're an average to above average team, the first thing they're looking at is the road games. Okay, who is that team playing on the road? Because those are all candidates for losses. Okay, this would certainly, if you're looking at the Miami schedule and you're figuring Miami's an 8-win team or something like that, you're saying where are they going to lose? And at Virginia Tech would definitely be one of those games. I think home against North Carolina would definitely be one of those games. At Clemson was definitely, without question, one of those games. So, I think that's where it starts right there. Now we get to see what happens on Saturday, and we'll see how that prevailing thought stacks up. But if you look at the win probabilities and stuff on ESPN, they've had us losing this game for weeks.
Well, my last comment is the next time you talk to Rhett Lashley in an interview, my opinion, he needs to get Will Mallory more involved. He has more durability than Brevin Jordan, and he's more reliable. When you're playing football, you're not going to always be 100%. You have to get out there and play when you're 80 and 85%. That's another problem I have with this team.
Well, Willie, six catches, 78 yards last week. So, and I agree with you. Up until last week, I thought he was the most underutilized player on the football team. And last week, they let him eat a little bit. He had 6 catches for 78 yards. That's a lot more like it. All right, Willie, hey, thanks for being part of the show, man. Give us a call next week.
All right, appreciate it.
You got it, man. All right, a couple more questions real quick. Does Manny need to change anything at the end of the season to continue progressing the football program? If there's something that needs to change, what will be needed? You've heard my opinion over and over on this. I think it begins and ends with recruiting and player evaluation. They're doing a good job this year in South Florida. Maybe taking a few too many guys from South Florida, in my opinion. But it's a weird year because of coronavirus. So they, on one hand, they really kind of don't have a choice. But on the other hand, and I'm going to piss people off by using Oregon as an example because they like to get on me about my opinions on Mario. But I'm looking at a program that's number 3 in the recruiting rankings that's in the middle of nowhere in Eugene, Oregon, that has no in-state talent at all to recruit from, and they're recruiting kids from 12 different states in the middle of a pandemic, so it can be done, okay? It can be done. And to say it can't is making an excuse. So that's what I would say. I would say recruiting, doing a better job outside of South Florida, getting in competition for elite players around the country, and that will start to take this program to a level that's higher than what we've been seeing now for many, many years. So that would be my opinion. Why isn't Rhett Lashlee more diverse with the running game? For top-tier teams, it's too easy to prepare and stop our running game. I think he's trying to keep things simple for the offensive line, would be my guess, and just let them try to get good at something. Let's remember where they were coming from at that position, not a real good place. Run blocking is really a big weakness. They've upgraded the pass blocking this year enormously. I mean, you look at Zion Nelson, a totally different player, but it does look like, maybe, they are trying to keep things a little bit simple so that they could try to get good at certain things in the running game. Does Manny understand that he needs to be above his players and coaches liking him? They need to both fear and respect him first in order for him to win. Look, fear is that's not Manny Diaz's style. It just isn't, and I don't think you'll ever see that with him. I've never seen any indication that he believes in that kind of authoritarian rule. I think he hires guys, he lets them do their job, and he lets the players play. You don't see a lot of discipline or things like that, for better or for worse. And I get the point, and it might be for worse, but I just don't think that that's who he is. Can the program ever be elite again when every year the coaches, players, and most of the fan base don't believe in or have the stomach for the type of high intense pressure to be applied at every level to be elite? Well, I don't think it's there right now. I mean, pressure like that typically has to come from within, and that's dependent on who you hire. I mean, Manny took over a 7-6 team, and they went 6-7 in year one. And I think before there's any pressure to be a champion or to be number one, there are a lot of first steps and intermediate steps that will have to be taken. All right, back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 678. You're live on CaneSport Live. 678, you with us?
Yeah, Gary, can you hear me?
Yep, who's this?
Junkie, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Junkie?
Oh, man, coolin'. First of all, man, let me just start by saying this, because we're going in circles. All right. First you say Mario he doing so good in Oregon, but then we talking about people like Packy, Mike Runt, Packy. Like, we have only one elite recruiter on defense. Well, two,
who would you say the elite recruiters are, Junk?
Down there, the D-line coach. But the D-line coach is the only coach who's proven to be a good developer. So Bounder hasn't hit Bounder, Rump, Packy. None of the defensive coaches have proven to be good developers. So when you say somebody like Eddie Jackson, who was a 3-star, not even a 4-star, like Hall, go to Alabama and be the best safety in the NFL, that's a direct reflection on that recruiting talking that y'all keep talking about, that you don't want to mention the people who develop these guys.
And evaluate. Who evaluated Eddie Jackson and decided not to recruit him? Who?
But no one who evaluated Lamar Jackson. I'm saying in South Florida you can't miss. But my point is, he was a 3-star. So if you're going to say we don't have talent when everybody we named, Blaze and all these guys, and the guy who beat out Blaze in his senior year was Jaden Davis, and he went to Oklahoma because Mike Runt only wanted to recruit cornerbacks who look and play like him. Mike Runt was just average. He was just on the best team ever. So, and he had elite size. So what they do, all he does is want to recruit guys like that, but he keep missing out on the cornerbacks because he's letting Jaden Davis go. He's letting Asante Samuel Jr. go because they're not his build and his style of play. So we keep Al Blaze, who didn't start. We keep a DJ Ivy, but that's the point. So the places where we're the weakest at is the places that we can't recruit. Like, I mean, we got players in the safety room, but they're not getting better. So they're gonna be what they were when they got there. That's why Hall and Carter hadn't done anything. Bubba Bolden, he's showing what he was because he was like one of the top players in the nation. But even he's fizzling out because he's not being developed by Banda. Like Banda don't have no track history of development. And when we say, oh, where would we be without De'Aaron King? I hate when we say that because that's like the dumbest statement we can make, man, as a fan base. Because that's like saying, where would Ohio State be without Fields? Like, look where Georgia is without Fields. You see what I'm saying? When you say stuff like that, that's the point of recruiting these players. So
I mean, would you agree that De'Aaron King is making about as big an impact on the program as anybody you've seen lately?
But what is Travis Etienne doing for Clemson? What is Trevor doing for them? That's why you recruit these people, because that's what their purpose is, to come in and be an impact player. Like, the best teams have players like this. Like, that makes no sense for us to say, where would we be? That's the point of going out to try to get a James Williams, because we want to be where he's going to take the program. Like, or where would we be? Where would any program be if they didn't recruit at the elite level or have elite developers? That's almost every program you can think of. Where would Florida be without Kyle Trask? I mean, like that. I don't know why we keep saying that. That's the point that's the purpose we went out to get.
Fair enough. I won't say it anymore. Fair enough.
But the thing is, like everybody's saying, like we have the talent on the team. I mean, Harrison Hunt, Nestor Severa, Phillips, Brochet, Sam Brooks. Like these boys was like it ain't like Sam Brooks dominated before he got hurt. He wasn't just he was just on the team loaded. No, he was the reason why that team was doing what they were doing. But when you come to Miami and you got Packy and whoever else developing linebackers, I mean, he can't get better. Like we can't get better in the areas that we can't. The areas.
So your feeling is the coaching's not good enough.
I feel like the coaches on like think about the coaches on the defense. Who have they developed and set? Who they made good? Who did they make better when they got their hands on them? But when you look at the DB coaches at Alabama, they take guys who were already good. That's what we keep missing. They were already elite because they got recruited by elite recruiters. Then they got developed. That's why they're going in the first round. We got mediocre recruiters outside of Banda. We got mediocre recruiters, even lower developers. So our players don't even get drafted, or they get drafted in the 6th round. Bandy. Trajan Bandy was a beast. Like, he was a beast at Columbus, and he was committed to Oklahoma. But he chose to come to Miami. Him and Henderson. Henderson get drafted in the top 10. Bandy don't even get drafted.
Yep.
Like, that's clear cut. They both were 4-stars. That's clear cut. And that's why they say, that's DBU. That's why we're gonna miss out.
Well, but Trey John's small. That was his biggest problem.
Santi Samuel Jr. small, but it's a significant difference. The dude at Philly, what's his name? Darius Slade. He's small, but he's elite. I mean, it don't matter. Size don't mean nothing if you elite and you can play the position. Ashanti showing us that. Phillips showed us that. But the thing is, man, our guys ain't getting developed by Mike Rump, and he's a terrible recruiter, one, and you're not developing the players too. Like, we're done. That's why our secondary can't go man to man, because there's no one back there who can do it. There's no one back there who was talented enough to do it first, because Mike Rump whiffing on all the talented guys. And then when the guys he do get there, he can't get them to the point where they can play man, because he's not a good developer. That's going to be our problem. So what we're going to do, we're going to use up where we got the good people. We got 3 old coordinators on the offense. Clearly, they're developers. Clearly, they can recruit. And we're going to have the offense carry these teams, because we don't have nothing else but we got an elite D-line, but the best player opted out. So, like, if we got a player who can opt out and be a top 10 pick, we got to dead the talent argument. Because how can you not have talent, but you got a top 10 player who's sitting out? You know, that's a contradiction. That's a lie. The players are there. We just ain't getting developed. And, you know, to say the schedule is this or that. The only team we're not playing from our conference is Duke. But guess what? We got NC State and Clemson to replace it. Like, so our schedule wasn't gonna be no different. We playing an all-conference schedule. Like, so I mean, there's no excuses. But we need to upgrade our defensive coaches just like we did on offense. Like, get these guys out of here who not gonna make us champions. Blake Baker, Packy, even Banda. Like, these aren't championship coaches, man. Like, Banda can serve as a recruiting coordinator or something, or, stay on the staff in some kind of capacity, but we don't have the coaches who can identify the talent on defense, go get the talent, and then make the talent better when they get it. We just don't.
Okay, but you understand, Junkie. It goes back to the decision that Blake James made, because you can't hire Manny Diaz to be your head coach and expect him to be able to go out and hire an elite coaching staff. It's not going to happen.
It ain't gonna happen in 1 year or 2 years. But look, now Manny. See, my thing ain't. I'm not to the point to dismiss the Manny Diaz, because Manny Diaz has done way more than enough to convince me that, okay, the hire was like early and premature. I get that, but what Manny is doing is nothing short of what any coach will have to do here. He's doing the things he needs to do, but
he's doing a great job this year. But that doesn't mean he is positioned to go out and hire elite coaches. He's not.
He went and got an elite. He went and got three all coordinators for
He did a great job. He was in the right place at the right time with Lashley, because Lashley was on the rebound from getting run out of Auburn by Malzahn, and Lashley had gone to Connecticut, and then Lashley had gone to SMU, and Lashley needed a stage like what Miami offers, and so Manny was in the right place at the right time. But it's very hard to get elite coaches that, because everybody wants them.
T-Rob in the right place. T-Rob is in the right place now. Mudchamp is in the right place now. Don Brown is going to be in the right place now. It's several D coordinators about to be in the right place in the right time, just like they all getting ran out of town. And now it's gonna be the test to show if Manny is the championship coach this offseason. He's gonna address that defense, and if he don't, then we back to Al Golden. But if he does, he the GOAT.
All right, Junkie.
I'm gonna listen.
Thanks for calling in, man. I love when you do. Do it again next week. All right, man. Bye bye. Let's go to the 239. You're on CaneSport Live. 239, you with us? Doing good. Who's this?
This is Pepe here in Fort Myers.
What's up, Pepe? Talk to us. What you got?
Called a couple of times. I got a couple things, man. Have a couple questions for you. You mentioned the development of players and so forth, and just hearing you making a couple of comments. Do you think that D'Onofrio was a better recruiter than our current defensive staff?
Yeah, recruiting wasn't his problem. I mean, his problem was coaching. His recruiting wasn't. I mean, he could go to New Jersey and get David Njoku. Like, he could go. He could go to Jacksonville and help get Shaq Quarterman. Recruiting was not D'Onofrio's problem.
Right. Well, we know coaching was, or at least running the defense.
Yeah, coaching was his problem. He just didn't have a good scheme. Didn't have the right scheme for this program.
Gotcha. Another question. Just comparing your personal opinion and the quality of coaches, offense and defense that we currently have now, this very second. Do you think offense, defense, and the last caller made a really good point, Junkie made a really good point about, having three offensive coordinators on the offensive side. On the defense, we really don't have that resume with either of our position coaches. So your opinion is? Yeah,
I would agree. I mean, on the defensive side, it's Manny and Manny's disciples. I mean, that's exactly what it is. That's what Manny intended it for it to be, and it's either good enough or not good enough. That was the plan. It's Manny and his disciples.
Okay. Question: last year, with Enos being in charge, and we all remember his arrogance, standing there listening to interviews with his hands folded and with that smirk in his face. Did you feel, since we, pre-COVID, did you feel being on campus that Enos was the alpha dog, like, the untouchable on campus, versus the offense-defense coordinator and head coach? Do you see that mystique with
I don't know what you mean by alpha dog or whatever, but when we watched practice, it was very obvious that Enos was the best coach on the field. Okay, certainly, yeah. I mean,
on both sides.
To me,
both sides.
To me, if that guy had De'Ara King, he'd still be here. Right. That's my opinion.
Especially with our defense back then,
yeah. I mean, if he had if he had a quarterback like De'Ara King, he would still be here. I'm not making a judgment on whether he is better or worse than. I'm not comparing him to Lashley.
Right.
I think Lashley's been great, but that job would have not been open had Enos had De'Ara King, because he would have had more success.
Now let me ask you a question. On the same comment this year, meaning with Lashley, now obviously COVID, you're not there, but just your gut feeling, do you still feel the same way that now Lashley is the best coach on the field?
Yeah. Yes, I do. And I don't know if we're going to be able to keep him. I think that a lot of people out there are going to look and see the impact that he has made on Miami, and his agent is going to get a lot of phone calls. And I don't know what his agenda is, or whether he wants to stay or not stay. Maybe he stays for another year or two.
And
maybe he does.
Sportscaster always mentions that I can't believe he's not a head coach yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not a head coach because he's on the rebound. Like, he got run out of Auburn for whatever reason Gus Malzahn had, and he had to go to Connecticut and SMU to rebuild his reputation, and then he got the opportunity to come to a bigger stage at Miami. So now he's positioned for a better job. And I don't know. I've heard that Blake and Manny understand this, and I've heard that there has been some discussions internally about trying to find ways to maybe, improve his situation, maybe financially or whatever, to where they can get another, year or two out of him until he gets a head coaching job. But I don't know how that's. I don't know how that's going to end. I don't know.
Okay. Well, my thing, it just seems like a buddy of mine mentioned LSU and Miami with it's like the perfect storm. It'll be the next LSU winning, blah blah blah. He was just trying to basically add more fuel to my fire, and I was like eating it up. But the difference is, to me, is that Oregon, the head coach from LSU versus Manny. Manny seems more passive. He's not like the alpha guy. And one of the things I want to make a comment, as far as recruiting and the quality of talent that we have. What's your, coaching versus development? What's the difference there in your opinion?
I mean, it's two different agendas. I mean, development is a year-round process. It's not just during the season. I mean, if you're good at developing, you got to do it 12 months a year. The coaching comes into play in September, October, November.
Coaching use X's and O's?
Yeah, I mean, that comes into play during the season when you're game planning and you're having the match wits with other teams and make the right calls and that sort of thing. And obviously, you're still developing your players 12 months a year. You're developing them in and out of games each week. But to me, development is a 12-month project, whereas the actual coaching is more in spring practice for a few weeks and then obviously in the fall.
Gotcha. All right, man. And then the last thing is, we are 6-1. King just did 400+ yards, ran for over 100-something yards. We're 6-1. I mean, last year, if you would tell me, hey, 6-1, how would you feel? And
I'm surprised more guys aren't happy. I'm really surprised. I'm surprised more guys aren't happy. It's weird because they're looking for style points and they're forgetting where we're coming from. We were 6-7 not too many months ago, losing to FIU and Louisiana Tech. That's where we're coming
losing
from.
All these games that we should have won, and we're learning how to win.
Yeah, I mean we were not even a good Sun Belt team in December. Okay, that's where we're coming from. So
FIU.
yeah, you got to be realistic. All right, Pepe. Thanks for being part of the show,
All right,
man. Give us a call next week. Yep. All right, guys. I got 3 of you left on the board. I'm going to try to get to all 3, but you got to keep it quick. It's up to you. Let's go to the 210. You're on CaneSport Live. 210, you with us? Going once, going twice. All right, next week. We're down to 2. Let's go to the 504. You're live on CaneSport Live. 504, you with us? Going once, twice. All right, then we're down to 1. Let's go to the 540. You are live on CaneSport Live.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Who's this?
Jason.
What's up, Jason? What you got for us?
Oh, we're 6-1, and we just lost to Clemson, so we got to keep that in perspective.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've always, when I've called in, I've kind of tried to talk about the big picture, but you know, it's we've had COVID happen, and we got to be glad we at least have football. You know.
Yeah, it's like I was just saying a minute ago. I'm surprised more people aren't happy. You know, it's 6-1. It seems like everyone's reaching for more, and I get it. Trust me. I mean, we all want to play for championships. That's just not the level that we're at right now.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I'm guilty of this. I've probably been called a doomer on your website, but it's important to keep things in perspective. All of us want to project what we saw when the Canes were dominating onto players we see now. We want to hope that so-and-so is the next Ed Reed. I remember back a while ago people were saying Von Telmack is the next Ed Reed. And, I mean, you guys remember who that guy is? And
yeah, remember that? Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Don Chaney's going to be Willis McGahee. And so we're thirsty. We're hungry. We all have the same disease of the hunger for the championship and to hold up to number 1 again. And so we just got to keep things in perspective. Don't believe the hype. All the stars don't mean anything. Just ask Tate Martell. We have to have players do it on the field and don't just hope that you throw in a freshman with 4 stars on the offensive lineman that we're going to be mauling people over in the running game. So we just got to be patient. And I guess I'm running out of time here, but I wanted to ask you, do you know what Blake James's perspective is on all things, and do you think that he's going to actually try to have Manny Diaz sign a contract extension?
I don't think so. I'm certainly not this year. I mean, we're in year 2. I would be surprised if he did that. I mean, I think you got to give Manny another year or 2 to prove that he can take the program to another level. Okay, because I remember he gave Mark Richt the extension pretty quick. Well, Manny Diaz is not Mark Richt. You know, let's be honest. And you know, yeah, they made him misjudged on Mark Richt. Maybe Mark Richt was burned out. But, you know, Manny doesn't command the same level of respect at this point as Mark Richt did. So we'll see. All right, Jason, let me let you run. Give us a call next week, okay? Okay. All right, last call of the night. Let's go to the 904. You're live on CaneSport Live.
Gary, how you doing, man? It's Antoine from Jessica. How you doing?
What's up, man? Take us home. What you got?
All right. My first point I want to make to you, man, is a lot of the callers been right. Here's a question I want to ask you. Is Blake James qualified on his own to hire the head football coach at the University of Miami? Not in my opinion. I think he proved it by not doing a coaching search. Okay, like, how do you not do a coaching search? How do you not do a coaching search to see who your pool of candidates is before you pick somebody that you feel is the greatest guy on the list that's going to take the program to championship level? You got to do a coaching search, even if you end up in the same place. You got to do a coaching search.
Exactly. So if the guy who made the original call to hire Manny Diaz wasn't qualified to make the decision, it's a trickle-down effect all the way down through the program. Now, I want you to take a look. Now, I know this call, I'm going to get off the phone in less than 3 minutes. In 2 minutes, I'm going to be gone. This is what I want you to do when you get off the phone. I want you to look at the resume of our defensive coaching staff. I'm talking about Rump, I'm talking about Patke, Banda, the defense coordinator, Blake, and all down to the D-line coach. I want you to take a look at all their collective career resumes, their actual resumes as football coaches, and then compare it to the offensive side of the ball, but I want you to do one better. I want you to right now we're in the top 10. I'm not saying we're a top 10 team. We're in the top 10. I want you to compare their resumes, all the guys on the defensive staff, even our head coach, to the other defensive staff of the other top 10 coaching staffs in the country. I want you to take a look at it and see what you see, because I know what I would see. What I see is a bunch of guys who should not be there, a bunch of guys who should not be coaching at the University of Miami. It's right. It's in black and white. Don't take my opinion for it. Look at it. I want everybody who's still on this phone, still listening, may not be but a few people, look at their actual career resumes.
Okay, but Antoine, let me stop you. Okay, and what you're saying is a legit point. You know, I love every one of those guys. They're all great dudes. I get what you're saying, but you made the point at the beginning of the call. It starts with the first decision. And, you know, when you're hiring a head coach at the University of Miami, you have to take a look at what type of staff that person is going to be capable of putting together. And you have to, you know, you can't be in fantasy land about it. And that's part of the job. And that's where Blake James failed, in my opinion, because Manny had no chance to put together the kind of staff that what you're talking about. No chance. No chance at all. One, probably doesn't have the budget. Two, you're not going to be able to hire elite coaches around the country who think they're better than you. Okay, that's where it's if they're not coming here.
Ding, 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 ding. We have
and like I said, he hit the lottery with Lashley.
He doesn't have anybody on the defensive staff to say, Manny, hey, this is a bad idea. They're all yes men. Every one of them is a yes man. Nobody's going to say, Manny.
I don't know that that's the case. I mean, I do think they have open debate in that meeting room, but I get what you're saying, Antoine. All right, hey, let's continue this conversation at a future time. But I understand your point, and I think we kind of clarified it. So give us a buzz earlier next time. All right, man. Thanks for being part of the show. All right, I want to thank everybody that called in tonight. Great show. We'll be back next Tuesday night. Canes at Virginia Tech on Saturday, and a lot of people don't think Miami's going to win. Hopefully the Canes prove them wrong, and we go to 7-1, and then we'll see if the mood in the room is a little different next week. All right, so with that, I will say good night, everybody.